I move the screen too, so our audience members can see. Yeah. Okay. I can do it. Molly, know while you're on stop.
Awesome.
Sorry about that.
Great.
It didn't work and it shut down YouTube.
Okay, we'll just stay on YouTube. All right.
All ready?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, well, thanks again. And I guess I'll just say advance and we'll move to the next slide.
Sure.
Okay, so of great interest to this area, of course, is our Silverton Gold project. And I'm going to go ahead and hand this off to Terry, and then I'll come back up.
Howdy, everyone. Evening. Terry Schuyler, Key Accounts Executive. So it wasn't this time last year, I think it was in March or something, that we came and presented trying to answer the question of WTF, why are we having so many power outages here in Silverton? And at the time we presented, kind of a tutorial on how power is delivered here from transmission to distribution and the distribution grid and challenges we have providing power into, one of the most remote spots in our entire service territory. And at that time, I kind of threw a challenge out there. It's like, well, how can we work with you guys instead of just being the only source of resiliency in the community? And it was about a week later after that, I think, we came across this IIJA, which is the infrastructure bill that had a program from the Department of Energy called the OCED, which was the Office of Clean Energy Demonstration. They had this grant opportunity for what they called a prize, which is unlike a grant, it's just a cash handout. And we came and we got together, we kibitzed about, what could we actually apply for? And we came up with the idea of the Silverton Gold Project. And the idea there being that how would we look at the broader issue of resiliency, not just for electrical resiliency? And we came up with what we call 4 gold nuggets. Is this all new to you, or have you seen this slide before, for example? You have seen it, so I won't go into great detail, but 4 nuggets: the community resilience plan, a beneficial electrification plan, a climate action plan, an electrical resilience and renewable energy plan. Tonight was a meeting, I think it was the second one maybe that Silverton participated in, by the Snuffles Energy Board, which is the body that was the regional climate action plan for San Miguel County and Uray County. And as part of this program, we proposed that Silverton and San Juan County join that climate action plan, and then they begin the work of coming up with all the metrics for the greenhouse gas reductions and what does it look like to be part of this larger plan. So that meeting actually occurred tonight. In fact, I was attending that in Durango and then flew up here after that to attend this. But what I want to hit on real quick is gold nugget number 4, which is the one that San Miguel Power adopted as our participation in the plan. And in that nugget, if you call it a nugget, there was 3 sub nuggets. First was looking at the local distribution grid here. So, the distribution grid is aging as it has been since it's been put in place. And so we petitioned for funding to begin looking at a plan to update or modernize the distribution grid. And that initially would require conducting an inventory of our existing hardware in town and seeing where are the vulnerabilities, where are there areas that we could potentially find some additional funding, either in our capital budgets or through grant money, to find ways over time to update and keep current the distribution grid here. And we have begun that process, and I'll hit on another slide later today one of the things we've done already as part of that. The second bullet, or the second sub nugget, is behind the meter microgrid. So we at San Miguel Power have worked San Miguel County and facilitated and supported their work in putting microgrids in their sheriff's offices. And that's a microgrid that provided battery backup in conjunction with their generator. They had it was a new facility that they built in the Ilium Valley, they updated the Ilium Valley facility, and they put in a new annex out in Norwood. And they were planning on having generator backup, but our personal experience, San Miguel Power, and I can go into a funny little anecdote about that. But just in general, generators are a mechanical device. They require fuel, they require maintenance, they're costly, they're not as reliable as they should be. Sometimes they don't start. In fact, in the testing of the San Miguel County systems, they failed every time we tried to start them up. So what we decided to do here in working with Jim Donovan is do an inventory of what we call the anchor institutions, the key facilities in town that would be prime targets for what we call behind the meter microgrids, which are smaller battery-based systems. Typically, they could use a generator, they could have a small solar system. But the idea there is that they would be providing resiliency for critical loads, not necessarily the whole building, although they could, depending upon the size of the loads in the building, they could provide backup for the entire building. But generally, it's what loads do you want to make sure you have operating if the generator were to fail, if you had a generator? So that's going to be the focus of target number 2. And we've begun, Jim provided me an Excel spreadsheet with a list of anchor institutions. This building is one of them, of course. EMS, the water, sewer, fire department, gas stations, the grocery store, things that if for some reason the grid goes down, which it has done frequently, based on mostly extreme weather, that these institutions would have at least 4 hours of backup. We'll take that concept and now expand it to the entire community. And a community microgrid is the exact same concept. It would include a large battery bank that would power the entire town for 4 hours. And we have historic data on the load for the town and the county for that matter, since there's, well, mostly the town. It's the circuit that comes out of our Cement Creek substation. So that would provide a large battery bank, and then look for a location to put in a community solar system that would provide the recharge to that battery bank in the case of an extended outage. But meanwhile, when there is no outage, that community solar system would generate electricity likely equivalent to the annual load of the town. I mean, to be determined through this study. And the idea being that this community would effectively become off grid with the community solar system and the community battery bank. Meanwhile, during normal operations, we're generating locally produced solar energy. So that's the nature of this program. And I'm going to turn it back over to Alex. But and by the way, I'm happy to answer any questions now or at the end. But this is the what we are working on as a result of the OCED 100K prize. I think San Miguel Power got about a third of that for the 3 nuggets you see here. We have begun work on all of these things. Actually, I'm taking some of that funding and turning it back over to Eco Action to use some of their resources to help with gold nugget number 2, for number 2. So this is in the works. So we're in process. There's a phase 2 funding round that we are collectively looking at, which would provide up to $200,000 more. Again, a prize, a handout. So the team, the town, the county, Eco Action Partners, we're going to be getting together and looking at, well, how could we, what will we do to expand what we've already proposed? In the case of nugget number 4, to do an actual feasibility study or a large study for a community microgrid, we have 4 other microgrid planning grants that we got through DOLA. I didn't get this community plugged in time to get that, but we received about $45,000 per planning grant. So it's somewhere in that neighborhood, maybe more because the system that would be required here would be larger. We're probably going to be looking, and I'll show you this in another slide, I think, I can't remember, at some of the repository areas, wherever we can find a brownfield that would be a good candidate for that, as opposed to putting a microgrid or a community solar array right here in the middle of town. So that's where we're at with our resiliency project. And like I said, either answer questions now or later.
I have a quick one.
Sure.
The idea of being supported by renewable energy for the whole town is really compelling.
Yeah.
Exciting. I'm curious, how do the economics work that it's like, okay, with San Miguel Power to support us in that process?
That's
it just effectively takes us out of paying you guys for our electricity.
No, it doesn't do that. Yeah, it would just be that the community solar array would feed into the grid. It would be basically a power plant, and the economics of combining the output of the solar array would hope with the grant money. That's the key. Is that there's all this enormous opportunity to look for grant money. That if we could buy down the cost of that, such that the cost of the energy that it produced, it's not going to be a big system. Probably up here, it's about going to be a 1.3, 1.5 megawatt system. Not small, bigger than any one we have in SMPA's territory. But if the if the cost after the grant money buys the system down, with one interesting sort of a cutting edge caveat, we would look to use the battery bank, which is there for resiliency, add additional capacity to that battery bank equal to the daily output of that solar array, and then process that solar energy and push it through the battery at night. Rather than putting the energy on the grid during the day, when all we get is the wholesale value of the energy, if we push it out at night, we can also reduce SMPA's demand charges, and we would use that savings to help contribute to the economics of this system. So
Got it.
in theory, if we can monetize the battery bank by pushing the solar through at night, combined with the buy down from the grants, then theoretically the cost of the whole system is less on a cents per kilowatt hour than what we pay Tri-State for normal wholesale power supply. And that's what the feasibility study would be designed to determine, is if can we make this pencil out?
So in partnership and utilizing grant money, we would build the facility, power production, but then the end user would still pay their power bill as normal. And the facility would be maintained and overseen by San Miguel Power.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
Concept that if it pencils out, we'll leverage the value of the solar to basically pay for the resiliency.
Got it.
That's really the biggest benefit, is that if all of this combined makes economic sense, you're gonna get the resiliency of the town with no extra cost and no cost to any of the members. We would also look at some interesting and out of the box thinking on how to give preferential treatment to the folks in town to participate in the community solar array and get some, out of the box benefit outside of taking the renewable energy credits from the array and sticking them in our totally green pool.
Got it. That makes great sense. Thank you. Yeah.
Great. Anything else? Okay, we'll play tag.
All right. Advance. So this is a report we want to give over the whole year. And so this was kind of a development that took place in 2023. And it's really actually been a long time coming. We've had this problem at SMPA, and to explain that, I got to go over the bill really quick. If you've looked at your power bill, you pay two parts. You have a fixed access charge, and then you have a volumetric energy charge that you pay based on how much energy you use. And there's a lot of complicated explanations, but basically what it comes down to is, in order to deliver electricity, there has to be infrastructure. That infrastructure has to be maintained. We consider those basically fixed costs because we have those costs whether we sell a kilowatt hour of electricity or not. And so that's what the access charge is designed to recoup. So, but there's a little bit of a problem if a member of San Miguel Power leaves the system, closes out their membership, and then wants to keep, for some reason, their service in place and keep that maintenance happening, but they're not paying that regular monthly access fee, especially if they're going to then come back every year on a seasonal basis. And so we had to make a change to the way that we are charging those members, and it relieves some of that pressure on all of the other members who do stay on year round and end up having to pay those maintenance costs. So we have options for a member who says they're going to leave, and we feel like this is a more equitable way to recoup those costs. It lowers a little bit of that pressure on our members who are year-round members. And so we put that policy into effect this year, and that's our idle services policy. Advance. So Terry alluded to the cost savings that a microgrid project could potentially bring. And there's another nuance to that. He kind of mentioned that we could leverage the energy produced during the day, solar energy stored in a battery, can be deployed at night. So that's a very important thing to consider, because nighttime, and specifically the hours of 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. is a period that we've identified as our peak. Most of our load as San Miguel Power is residential. And so if you looked at our load profile, which is just basically a line graph of how much energy we're using, it really follows that kind of residential pattern. And so when people are at work in the middle of the day, it kind of dips. When they come home at night, they fire up everything, the TV, the internet, they're cooking, the heater, all of that leads to a peak. And of course, that's when the sun's headed down. So we're not really getting the solar energy that we'd like. A microgrid would store the energy from the sun and then be able to deploy that in the evening. This is not the resiliency piece. This is on an ordinary day. So that helps to lower the pressure on our rates because as San Miguel Power, we purchase power from our wholesale power provider, which is Tri-State. And during that peak period, that cost is 4 times the amount that it would be at other times during the day. So if we're using energy that was generated earlier in the day, we're using energy that is less expensive. And that lowers pressure on rates for everyone. So these are the this is the knowledge that we want to help communicate to all of our members. And to that end, we are putting new items on people's bill that show when the peak was, how much energy they were using during their peak. And so it's just to raise that awareness of that time of day does matter. Timing matters is the name of the campaign. So advance. So we also did want to bring you an update on the Red Mountain Electrical Reliability and Broadband Improvement Project. This is another thing that we introduced here was before COVID. We introduced the concept of the changes that we were going to be making to this power line that goes over Red Mountain Pass and the need for a rebuild. And then after that, we went ahead and worked on the vegetation management phase of that project. That phase was completed, and but it did require road closures while workmen were removing vegetation from that area. And of course, we have to work when the weather's good, and when the weather's good, that's business season. And so that's always a challenge to try and figure that out. The work that we're looking to do now is the vegetation management is done, and now we're working on the first phase of, you could call it phase 2, the construction phase. And here to give you more details about that is Jeremy Fox, who is our COO, and he is on Zoom. And I'll let him speak to that.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. I'm going to leave my camera off just due to the connection being a little bit spotty. But yes, thank you, Alex, and thank you, everyone. I'm really happy to see that we're finally getting to a construction phase with this project. Just FYI, we have solidified a contractor for a section. We'll be originally working from top of the pass at Idorado down to almost a snow shed there, right at our Red Mountain substation, a small substation in the switchbacks. So that kind of goes through that Ironton area, which is actually the easiest build of the rebuild. And we wanted to get that done first. We are hoping, if everything goes well, that we'll be able to work on the URA side of that project, which will be the Ruby Walls, the most difficult section, potentially the following year. With that section, there may be some potential of more road closures, but the road closures this year would be very low impact. It's really just when they're pulling wire across the road and short duration. So nothing remotely close to anything we had to do when we were doing the fire mitigation and the vegetation work on that project before. Are there any questions on the Red Mountain project?
Doesn't look like it.
All right, can we move on to the next slide, please? Thank you.
Yeah,
As many of you know,
with this.
The Cement Creek substation, we've been doing some work this past summer over there, working with Tri-State. in expanding the substation yard. And that was all part of a long-term plan to update some things inside the substation. As you recall, the last several years, we've had several longer outages for Silverton. You guys are very aware of that. A couple of them were planned and several of them weren't planned. We appreciate your understanding and working with us and Tri-State to get that back on as soon as we possibly could. With the expansions that we're doing at the substation, we're getting ready to put in, or Tri-State rather, is going to install a temporary mobile transformer into the substation area. What this will allow us to do is bypass the existing transformer that has had several outages or faults on it. And typically when that happens, they want to do some maintenance on the transformer, take it down, double check everything inside the transformer and make sure it's well oiled and ready to roll for the next go round. We're scheduled to do that sometime in June, we hope. There'll be a short duration outage planned, of course, when they install the mobile. Everything will operate as normal during that time, during the summer. Roughly 6 to 8 weeks later, once they install some protective equipment and update the transformer, we'll have another small planned outage, likely in the evening or at night, whatever works out best with you guys, just to heat everything back up and roll it back over. They should be fairly short outages, but those will be planned, and hopefully that'll keep our Cement Creek substation modernized for the future. So we're looking forward to that.
I have
Any questions about that?
Yeah, I do. I have a quick question. So it's my understanding that if something happens at the Tri-State substation, then somebody from Tri-State needs to come up to fix it. That's what was happening, because this happened last winter, but it also coincided with past closures. So we oftentimes couldn't get somebody from Tri-State. Is there a way that we can get the local SMPA guy approved to work on the substation, or is that just not a possibility?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. The last time it was restored was SMPA. Yeah, all of our guys are trained to be substation switchmen for Tri-State, and you know, the last time that happened, luckily we did have two people in town. We had the foresight that the weather was bad, and we sent an extra guy over there. Luckily, our two guys were able to get everything back up and working with Tri-State dispatch, got everything up and running for you guys. Realized there was a really bad time to be out of power, but that's always when it happens, right? When we least expect it. But yes, those guys are trained, and we do keep an eye on the weather over the winter time, especially for Silverton. As you know, we have one lineman that's stationed in the town, but in the wintertime, when there's a big storm coming in, we typically try to have an extra person, at least one extra person there on call in town.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Well, and follow on that, Jeremy, thanks for answering Tyler's question. I think our question from last time was, are there the agreements in place? Like, do you guys have stuff in place with Tri-State where there are agreements for them to work? It sounds like they're trained on it. At least from what we had heard last time, they were able to get access and do the repairs, but we just have the stuff in place that it's kind of, we don't have to jump through several hoops when the power is out and you can't make the phone calls and make it happen.
Well, there's definitely agreements in place between San Miguel Power and Tri-State. Their Western Slope director and myself are on the phone immediately, making calls to see how fast we can get people there, or if our guys can go ahead and get started on the process if it were to go out. One of the things that I might add, that with the modernization of some of the things they're doing in the substation, they're also adding it's a switch in the substation, and it will allow us to get everything back up and faster than it did last time. We've had some interesting situations that have happened in the last two major outages over there. And kudos to Tri-State for stepping up and investing in their side of the substation to modernize things and look for a faster restoration. A lot of the delays that we saw before, whether it be weather or whatever, will be eliminated by an extra breaker in there for restoration.
That's great. Thank you.
Were there any other questions on resiliency or substation, et cetera? So I think that might be our last slide.
One more.
So I think there's,
So thank you.
Well, it's the thanks.
I just wanted to thank you guys for coming up. I know we're little, we're small, but just really appreciate the attention and the partnership. I think that's been really important to this board. And after a variety of experiences, I think we felt like it was our duty to kind of advocate on behalf of our community members that we were hearing from. And so just appreciate the attention, the partnership with the prize. I think that's really exciting, and kudos to staff and the partners involved. And so I just want to express appreciation for coming up and giving us the attention and the focus.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, any other trustee discussion or questions on the presentation? Wonderful. So we will now move to new business. The first item 4A is a public hearing on resolution 2023-15, a resolution for supplemental budget and appropriation pursuant to section 29-1-109 of the CRS, a resolution appropriating additional sums of money to defray expenses in excess of amounts budgeted for the town of Silverton, Colorado. And since this is a public hearing, for each of the items we have tonight, we'll have an overview presented by staff most likely. And then we will open up the public hearing component of public comment. Following public comment, we will then have a trustee discussion and then consider a motion to approve or deny the request for the resolution.
Okay. You ready? All right, this is going to be a really short staff review. There was one line item that was over in the library budget, and that was the repairs and maintenance line item. And that was due to an unbudgeted project replacing the stick of the roof. And they were able to get, the reason was we were able to get a snow blower up on top of the roof now, saving on manpower, but the stairs ran over budget. But that is our only supplemental budget for 2023.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I guess one quick question for Clayton. Do we do public comment ahead of trustee discussion and questions, or the trustees discuss and then do public comment? I assume public comment comes first.
Sorry, I had to get promoted there. Yes, Mr. Mayor, if it's a public hearing, you got to take public comment before you take any action on it.
For sure. Thank you.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Do we have any public comment in person or on Zoom relating to this resolution? And if you're on Zoom throughout the evening, please click the raise hand button to signal to us that you have a comment. All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment, go to trustee discussion.
Yeah.
Impressive. Only one. And it seems like a really good thing for the library.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for the resolution for supplemental budget and appropriation pursuant to section 29-1-109 CRS, a resolution appropriating additional sums of money to defray the expenses in excess of amounts budgeted for the town of Silverton, Colorado.
Second.
Clarify that's a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Cool.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Edwards?
Yes.
Trustee Kränker?
Yes.
Trustee Harper?
Yes.
Trustee Birma?
Yes.
Trustee George?
Yes.
Pro Tem Barney?
Yes.
Mayor Furman?
Yes. Very much. We'll move on to new business item 4B, another public hearing, resolution 2023-16, a resolution adopting the 2024 budget and setting forth the expenditures and revenues for each of the various funds of the town of Silverton, Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2024 and ending December 31, 2024.
So in your packet, there's a memo outlining what is statutorily required to present the budget. We have met all those requirements. Even with the transfer of funds and reduction of administration fees, we still have a healthy ending fund balance to cover the 3-month reserve. This is due to the increase in funds that we expect to be reimbursed from the law enforcement contract, as well as updated actuals for 2023. The only public comment that we did receive on the budget since our last meeting is the request from the fire department to remove the extra funds from their line item. We fund the fire department's operational budget in line item 10-422000340. And their budget is 54,750. We also budget an additional 10K for their escrow and 15K for pension in our IGA. That's with the county. So that's not reflected in that line item. We currently have $77,750 budgeted in the fire department's operational budget line item. And as a proposal to take the extra funds out, I would say let's put that in, or possibly consider putting that into our nonprofit budget line item, and then have the Friends of the Fire Department submit a nonprofit request for the funds in the coming months. And we do have the fire department here.
Thank you.
Well, obviously. Yes. Going up.
So now we'll open up public comment.
Jerry Tamer will speak for the fire department and answer any questions. Not happy.
Great.
Thank you.
I guess at first, under advisement of our accountant, they asked for us not to put fireworks in our operating budget because obviously it doesn't fall within normal operating expenditures. So that's our ask. I think on top of that, there are two other proposed fireworks shows, Snowscape and possibly a potential show for the 150th anniversary of Silverton. Those are both put into events, I believe, and we feel that this is more appropriate put into a similar line item and not in our operating budget. So that's kind of where our stance is on it. I can answer any questions or I can try to.
Would it be all right for us to say that you're directing us? So last year, the board said, we kind of want to exit the conversation around how long the show is, how much it costs, and overall administration of the show. And so we attempted to give the fire department that additional discretionary funds equal to the amount the fire department was going to spend on fireworks last year. In order for us to, I think, be aligned with that while still honoring your request, would it be all right to say that you're directing us to take that supplemental budget that we had identified for the fire department and redirect it as a nonprofit donation?
Correct.
Okay. Because I think that still follows the policy that we were trying to pursue last year.
Right.
Achieves the outcome.
I agree.
You guys are like,
And, and just like last year, we're right up against the line here and we've got to make this decision. And that is what we're asking.
okay.
Yeah.
We're still in public comment, right?
So in public comment, for this one and this particular topic, it may be helpful to have a conversation as opposed to traditional public comment. So I'm not sure if I think we should leave public comment open if there's more conversation to be had with members of the fire department, so that it doesn't sound weird for them to be responding to us.
Perfect.
And I don't see any public comment on Zoom, so we'll focus on the in-person conversation. So trustees, any other thoughts for the?
Well, I just love talking about fireworks, right? It's right on my hillside. I love watching it. I appreciate you guys coming and clarifying. I think I had a couple conversations with Chief back when we originally started talking about this in the finance committee meeting, and it made a lot of sense back then that like fireworks in an operational budget might not be the right way to go. And so that made a lot of sense when it came up there. We've had a lot of back and forth about what happened last year and how we should go forward. So from my perspective, I can speak for my colleagues. I think this budget increase for the operational budget makes sense. It feels really in line with what we've seen in other departments, right? It's kind of in line with inflation and operating costs going up. I don't have a lot of problem with that, funding it as presented. I think to Shane's point and what you're saying, Jerry, to me, it makes a lot of sense if the town is funding a fireworks show in a certain capacity or contracting for it, it seems like it makes sense to put it in the appropriate place. So it makes sense for everybody. I would feel a lot more comfortable as a town trustee, having a contract, protecting you guys, protecting the town. Again, Chief and I chatted today about insurance and how it's a huge benefit for the community that the fire department does the show because they have that insurance coverage. And so I would like to see us, we kind of tried to come up with a solution last year where, again, there was some discretion around how you guys wanted to manage it, but it does seem to me like we're in a place where it makes a lot of sense to have a contract, whether that's a multi-year contract like we do with ski joring or summer sounds, but having something so it's clear to friends of the fire department or the fire authority what's to be expected and the town knows. And what happens when there's a drought, what happens with people walking up the hillside during the 4th of July that we kept telling people to get away from the ordinances. So I think that makes a lot of sense in having a contract that spells it out for everybody. So I don't have a problem with moving the line item of the 23,000 to a transparent, explicit place and just working with, and again, I don't know if you want that to come through the Friends of the Fire Department as a nonprofit request and just having the same information that we get from the other nonprofits and having a contract. So everybody's just clear and
That's what we're,
yeah,
that's the direction we're going.
that's me.
And it gives you the opportunity to come up with that budget, whether it's 23,000 or you say we can't afford that and we can only do 6,000.
Right, depending on
And
the,
then it gives you us and you that option of you can't shoot a show for 6,000 and you can find an alternative.
but again, I don't speak for my colleagues, but that was after further reflection, that felt really good to me.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And so long as we're setting up a process that is going to persist past this board and not be like a continued conversation every single year about how are we going to figure this out between us and the fire department, I'm good with it. I think setting a process up now sets the next board up for success.
Any other discussion with Jerry things, or should we close public comment?
One question I had for you guys or for Friends of the Fire Department as they think about it, or for staff, is if we're thinking about some of these other fireworks shows as well that we're contracting for, would we put all of those in the same contract? Even if they're funded, I think you brought up, Jerry, some of them are funded in the events budget, some of them are funded as a separate line item, and we do a nonprofit request. Can we still do a contract that kind of specifies it so it's not confusing for everybody to have, here's your contract for snowscape, and here's your contract for the 150th anniversary, and here's your contract for.
As you're saying that, one thought that occurs to me is that if we have multiple shows that use fireworks here, and one of those shows is canceled for weather or a drought or something like that, it's there's another option for using the fireworks before they expire.
Right.
So actually combining all those things does make.
It would streamline the process as well.
Yeah.
You guys be okay with doing something like that?
Yeah, I think that's the way it should be done. Should be a contract with us in the town
For the
to
year.
shoot the show,
Mhm.
and it's your guys' decision what that budget is. And then from there we can figure out if we can shoot the show for that.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think it comes back to a model. I think ski touring is a great example. Summer Sounds is a great example where it's this is what the town contribution is. And then those entities determine what their fundraising or their sponsorship or whatever is. And that kind of dictates the scope of, is it, I don't know, some name headliner, or is it a lesser named headliner show or whatever it is? So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Is that good for staff if it's one contract, even with these separate budget line items?
Absolutely. And we can clean up the budget line items as well.
Great.
Is there anything else you guys would like to say before we close public comment?
So.
I think, the fire department look at it. If you're going to the events coordinator, he's basically contracted us already to do the show that we have on record.
Yeah.
And the other monies that are put aside, you have to do a separate contract saying, you guys will say, okay, here's X amount of dollars. We would like to do that money for their product. Ask for that you guys would like to spend that money for the product, once products received, you receive the invoice for the product. Okay, just to be clear on the fire department only charges for the product.
Right.
No charge for man hours or anything like that. All the town is going to put aside strictly product. The other side of the financial part of it is taking care between the Fourth of July committee and the fire department.
There's,
Yeah.
I know, it's like, are we having an emergency? Good thing we have the fire department here.
Their heaters. You should hear my office.
Okay.
Oh, it's lovely.
Okay. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Anything else before we close public comment?
Well, let me ask another question, like,
Please.
as far as the not the negotiations, but just the contract, we're talking about contract with the fire authority or the Friends of the Fire Department or both, really? I guess that's sort of,
The contract would run through, could we still keep it separated from the fire authority?
yeah,
So it'd be a contract where the Friends of the Fire Department would contract with the fire authority to shoot the show.
great, yeah,
And contract with the Friends of the Fire Department.
to pay for the show.
Yeah, to pay for the product.
Pay just for the product.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
Great.
And you guys are looking for a 3, 5, or 7-year contract, or does it matter?
I think it's all depends on your budget. You know, what I mean, if you come back next year and, you know, we have a horrible year and sales tax is down and, you know, we cut the budget in half, you know, we may decide we can't shoot that show. You know, I sat through multiple meetings with staff and a couple of meetings with this board, you know, and I expressed that to you guys. You know, we're not interested in shooting a smaller show. There's a lot of pride. These guys have been doing it a long time. You know, they've gotten national recognition for this show. And, you know, they're not interested in shooting a $5,000 show. So I can't really answer that, Jim, because I can't say we'll do a 7-year contract, but
Then it's
budget's cut.
really a line item, I guess is what I'm saying. If it's gonna be a variable year over year, then it's not a true fixed line item.
Well, I mean,
A budget.
that's your decision. If it's a fixed, we've got this dollar amount, then yeah, we can do that contract. But if that's a moving target, we can't really commit to shooting a show in 2026 when we don't know what the budget is.
Gloria, our number was 23,000.
Yes.
Can I ask what your level of confidence is that you can shoot a show in 2024 with our $23,000
We
allocation?
can shoot a show for that line, for that amount.
And if we were confident in that number being consistent for 2 to 5 years, would that be something you were also confident about getting enough product to shoot a show for?
Speaking for myself or speaking for the Friends of the Fire Department? I mean, that's who you're actually contracting through. Personally, I feel yes. I think, you know, originally we were at a $28,000 show. And last year that budget was cut to 23. The Friends of the Fire Department were generous and kicked in another $5,000. So we were able to do the same level of show. There can be some tweaks in timing and, you know, maybe shortening a little bit here or there that we can still do a quality show for 23,000.
I think one of our concerns and why we were trying to figure out how to structure this differently than in years past was that we didn't want to set aside 23 and then, you know, find out in January that we really needed 31 or something. And
I'm confident in, you know, this in 2024, probably 2025, you know, as everybody knows, cost of goods are going up. So, you know, any hiccup in the supply chain, you know, you don't know what prices are. But if everything stays the way it is, yes, we can shoot that.
anything else before we close public comment? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
All right, so at this time, and I don't see any raised hands on Zoom, we'll close public comment and continue trustee discussion. Got a lot of discussion today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or suggestions?
On the larger budget as a whole, or are we walking through?
Yeah, this is on the whole
Yeah.
budget
Yeah.
right now.
Whole
Yeah,
shebang.
this
Yeah.
public hearing is regarding the memo
Right.
on the budget.
But I guess first, are we happy with where we got to with the fire department line items? Was there any further clarification from your perspective, Gloria?
No, what I'll be doing is taking that 23,000 that's in their operational line item right now and moving that to our nonprofit. So you'll have a $23,000 increase in the nonprofit line item, and then they will be submitting a nonprofit application.
Great.
At some point.
Great.
Okay, so the rest of the budget now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really appreciated, Gloria, how you put in the narrative, all the various pieces that like related to the master plan. And I think that was really significant to see that almost 800,000 is really directly tied to master plan priorities in a variety of ways. I would argue that there are a variety of other things we could tie. I know you're being very specific, but I just think that was neat to call out. And so there were two pieces of people are getting lost in all of the memos and all of the line items. Calling out two pieces from my perspective that were really significant were $768,000 really contributing in the budget to master plan priorities and over $2 million of grants administered. I think that's just really significant and worthwhile celebrating staff and the board and the community. So thanks for highlighting that.
Yeah.
And trying to keep us focused.
There is one more aspect of our budgeting software that I haven't revealed yet because I haven't been able to, but that will come out next year. But for now, people can go online to silverton.cleargov.com and play around with our current budget. Eventually, we will have all of our checks written live so that anyone can do a deep dive into our finances.
What an awesome step towards transparency.
Yeah,
Seriously. Yeah.
And bringing the budget into 2023.
Not through error-prone spreadsheets.
yeah. So there is a link in my narrative that I wrote.
Yeah.
That people can click on to not just look at a line item budget, but look at graphs and what their contributions are through their property tax.
Is it worth clarifying just for the public, based on our previous discussion about the state of the water and sewer funds and your discussion about property tax changes, that even with that, where we are with our current budget, you feel comfortable with our amount in reserves and with expenditures versus revenues and the final fund balance?
I do, yes. So like I alluded to earlier, even with the reductions, we have our year to date, we are looking better financially than last year, actually than any previous year. And then with our sales tax, I should say. And then we are expecting some refunds back from our shared services. So that puts our ending fund balance at about 498,000. And then we have 500 in reserves. So that hits almost our $1 million that we needed in reserves. So, and the fund balance is a little fudgy, but it's a good start.
There's been a lot of moving numbers, so
Yeah.
good job.
I don't know if it's just having done this 4 times now, but I think that, but this, even with all of the moving parts, this one felt
Really,
easier to follow
yeah,
Mhm.
than
really good.
in years past.
Definitely.
So I think we've seen improvement every year, and this is great.
There's like a sorting and categorization that happened somewhere along the way. And I mean, lots of like complexity and, in organizing, but also I think from a user perspective, just easier to track what's happening and where and what department, and even kind of a why based on how it's been sorted and categorized.
And we're definitely not there yet to be fully organized in our line items and our budgets, but we're getting there. And this software has actually really helped me organize. Okay.
Are there any other aspects of the budget that anyone would like to ask questions about or discuss further?
I feel like I'm good on talking about this one. I feel like all my questions have been answered at this point. Actually, really happy with where this is at.
Your first budget process, way to go, Liv.
It's survived.
We've worked on it a while.
If that's the case, is someone prepared to make a motion?
I am not prepared because I am having a real struggle with the packet tonight.
Let's hear it. I can get it right here, right? I can read it off the memo.
Mhm.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2023-16, a resolution adopting the 2024 budget and setting forth the expenditures and revenues for each of the various funds of the town of Silverton, Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2024 and ending December 31st, 2024.
Second.
Do we need to clarify that it includes the revisions that we discussed for the fire department?
And this,
With,
yeah, and this would be an administrative revision since we're not changing numbers, we're just
Okay.
changing line items.
So
So
the
you can say
resolution is
with,
good as is.
yeah, with administrative.
With administrative changes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Edwards?
Yes.
Trustee Kränker?
Yes.
Trustee Harper?
Yes.
Trustee Birma?
Yes.
Trustee George?
yes,
Person Barney?
Yes.
Mayor Furman?
Yes.
that's the,
Boom.
That's the
yeah, that's
budget.
the biggest one of the year. Good work.
Yeah.
Hi,
Gloria.
Lori.
And I you know, people watching online might have thought that just went really quickly. A ton of time and work went into that. It wasn't, it just happened that this is the finals.
Go back and watch
Yeah.
the other meetings.
Yeah. There's a lot of hours for your enjoyment. Okay.
So a quick question for Clayton. Resolutions 2023-17 and 2023-18 are not public hearings, is that correct?
Correct.
And 19?
They're not public hearings,
Okay,
so there's no requirement to take public comment before any discussion or decision on the matter. If that's what you're asking, Mr. Mayor, no.
thank you. And one of the things that caused me to ask that question is at the bottom of the memo with the motion that we just passed. It also includes a motion to adopt resolution 2023-17.
That one in there, okay.
But I just wanted to double check that that's the next.
Yeah,
agenda
that's the
item.
next one. I was gonna put them all in one memo for you and then I decided to break them up.
Okay. Great, thank you. Then we're good. So that's finito. So we will now move on to new business item 4C, resolution 2023-17, a resolution appropriating sums of money to the several offices, departments, boards, and other spending agencies of the town of Silverton, Colorado, in the amounts and for the purposes set forth therein for fiscal year 2024.
So if you didn't get it from that title, this resolution basically shows how we appropriate sums for each fund and defining that through the operations, capital, and debt.
Do we have any questions or discussion? Everybody feels good?
Feeling great.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2023-17, a resolution appropriating sums of money to the several offices, departments, boards, and other spending agencies of the town of Silverton, Colorado, in the amounts and for the purposes set forth therein for fiscal year 2024.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Edwards?
Yes.
Trustee Kränker?
Yes.
Trustee Harper?
Yes.
Trustee Birma?
Yes.
Trustee George?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney?
Yes.
Mayor Furman?
Yes. Thank you. We'll move on to the next new business item, 4D, Resolution 2023-18, a resolution to certify and levy the 2024 mill levies for the general fund of the town of Silverton, Colorado.
And I really want to thank Kim Buck for the quick turnaround and recertifying the mill levies after the last minute change from the state legislator after Prop HH didn't pass. This only affected us less than $15,000 in our revenue. And we are actually still up in our property tax from last year.
Wonderful. Any questions or discussion?
So this is kind of an administrative legality to passing our budget.
Correct. Yep, this is part of passing the budget. These resolutions are all included. They give to the state.
I'll make a motion to approve of resolution 2023-18, a resolution to certify and levy the 2024 mill levies for the general fund of the town of Silverton, Colorado.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Edwards?
Yes.
Trustee Cranker?
Yes.
Trustee Harper?
Yes.
Trustee Birma?
Yes.
Trustee George?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney?
Yes.
Mayor Perman?
Yes. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is new business item 4E, Resolution 2023-19, a resolution appropriating all lodging and camping fees for 2024.
And this resolution has not changed since last year's resolution, and it appropriates the lodging fees charged by the town to tourism and beautification.
Has there been any input since our conversation earlier today regarding the increase of?
Yeah, so the hotel fees are per room, not per bed. Wanted to define that.
$2 per night per hotel room.
Right.
Gotcha.
There has been, Jim and I had a conversation of possibly increasing that. And that's a possibility if you all want.
It also seems like the vacation home ones could be more specific. Like if you've got a studio apartment and then you've got a 7-bedroom house, perhaps $4 for each per night isn't commensurate.
Well, my thought in our conversation earlier today was interesting ways of generating new sources of revenue for the town while not hitting our local residents in the pocketbook. And this is a perfect way of doing it. We can generate tens of thousands of dollars while not impacting any of the locals within our community. So I for one was like, yeah, let's look into what these dollar amounts look like if we increase them a little bit.
I didn't get a chance to do that.
Okay.
Sorry, I was different meetings tonight.
But is that, I mean, that's.
But if you all want to direct me, like, we don't have to adopt this one tonight. We can. We've done this before with the lodging where we've pushed it off until January if we wanted to consider new forms of revenue.
Well, the other half of that came up at our last meeting talking about the water and sewer funds is that perhaps some of these fees generated by tourists can help to offset the costs that our residents bear for the infrastructure needed to support tourists.
Yeah, and I think that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to flush it out a little bit more, but.
I mean, we don't want to make it so that we can't afford whatever funds are paying for parks and buildings and grounds and community relations and the visitor center, but perhaps there's funds there that can go to offset the additional costs that our residents are going to bear next year.
I mean, I was just traveling this summer on a road trip and we stayed at a hotel and there was like county health services area tax on the bill. I mean, there were so many different ways, right, that people get creative in small rural communities and using different sources of funding to fund it. And I mean, we heard our SMPA friends today talking about how, you know, you have to fund a certain level of infrastructure regardless of whether that electricity is turned on or turned off. And so I think I love your idea, Jim, and I think it would be great to pursue. I guess my question to staff is this something that we work through the finance committee and then the board over the next couple of months? Like, I guess the question is, can we adopt this now and then revisit it in March and make a change, or is this set for the next year?
Yeah, I mean, so if we were going to push it off for like a couple months, I would have to get it done before the 31st.
Yeah.
January, but if we were to push it off for a couple months, then we would adopt this one now and then change it in a couple months.
Does staff have a preference?
Well, yeah, that was my question, is just how does this fit with the priorities that we've set and the full plate? And I mean, I think it makes sense, but anytime we make changes like this, it comes with research and discussion and takes time in the finance committee meeting, just throw that out there. I think it seems like a really reasonable way to collect some income, but it may not be reasonable to put it on the list for right this minute.
A few quick things. One is I own a hotel, so I'm not going to participate in the discussion about increasing the charges to hotels. I would like to participate in around the direction. Even if we support it, it's still a conflict of interest. Like it affects us financially and it's directly a conflict. So I'm not going to participate in that. I would like to participate after that in the direction of the funds once it's decided what the amount is that will be charged to hotels. And I think for context, it's also important to keep in mind that there is an additional 2% sales tax fee that's attached to hotels as well, so that our visitors are paying 14.5% sales tax on hotel rooms.
Yeah.
Looking at this directly, and this is what the conversation was today. 2% per night per room. I'm sorry, $2 per night per room. That's bumped up to $3 or $4. That's not gonna hurt anybody's feelings. To me, that's just found money. Right, but $1 per night for campground, if that's $2 or $3, it's not, I don't think these are hardcore requests or heavy requests that are gonna hurt people. In fact, I think it's gonna benefit our community. But I will leave it up to.
I don't think anyone's going to get in trouble for advocating for increased costs that affect them like financially negatively.
As far as pushing this down the road, I think to kick this down the road when we can start generating revenue.
Right now.
Now,
I'm just saying, for me personally, I've been tagged with so many things. I just don't want to participate in anything where I have a conflict, whether or not I support it.
I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate that as a board, we've kind of set that standard of, and if you're for it, you're stepping back if there's a conflict. Just want to throw that out there.
Is this something, Gloria, that we could push off and in January say we double all these? I mean, it's not an informed decision, but I think to Jim's point, these are not.
Well, and even if it's not,
that people pay a lot.
even if it's not directly a double, but like I agree absolutely with the hotel rooms. And then the vacation homes, absolutely. Like, should it be $2 per room in a vacation home rather than $4 for the entire house? Because that would definitely change on that. But then also, how does the staff administrate that? Like, do you have to go and inspect each vacation home and say, oh yeah, you have 12 beds. So you only have 2 bedrooms.
I think each report, like short-term rentals have that already.
Okay, perfect. Then I
Because there's a certain
definitely
point that
think,
it becomes not just a vacation
Yeah.
rental, it becomes like a B&B or.
Right, a threshold. Yeah, I mean, I think what we're saying is that this is a nominal cost increase to an individual with a high benefit collectively to the community.
Yeah. And I think, well, and it's passed on to
People who aren't living here.
tourists and not,
And people who use the infrastructure.
and people that use the infrastructure. Yeah.
Who need to
Right,
be
right.
there.
Yep.
Yeah.
My only question is just making sure that we, I don't know, think it through.
Does staff have a recommendation or preference on timing or level of effort involved in this? Because we can be quick and dirty, or we can be more extensive.
Yeah, if it's just as easy as saying, let's increase it $1 a night, then let's just increase it. If it's just, if it's something that staff would say, actually, there's a communication process and there's a way that we inform our lodging businesses and vacation rental owners, if there's this whole other context around this that we aren't aware of, we should become aware of it. If it's just as simple and straightforward as saying, let's bump it up, whatever the number is, then let's not overcomplicate it.
And that was my only comment. I apologize if it sounded like anything else. No, but that was my only comment, was to simplify the process and not complicate things. If it's a simple, like, hey, let's add another zero and move the decimal point over and do this, and hey, there you go. But obviously putting this back out to the public and having input on it would be fine. I mean, either way.
Gloria, what's the process like?
Well, and that would be up to you all on what the process would be. And it could be as simple as, let's raise it $2. Or if you'd like us to go out with comments, I mean that, or if you need me to do some research, then I would push it out a little bit.
I think this feels very in line with all of our priorities around infrastructure, affordable, all the things we need to do. I think this board can work nimbly and quickly, and this is a small change. Can we not agree right now, give staff direction to draft a new resolution at X dollars for each thing and vote on it at the next meeting?
But then do we also need to change that those funds can be used for infrastructure, right? That needs to be.
Can I recommend for the use of funds that we initially just have the increased funds go towards infrastructure so that we're not eating away from the current budget items until there's opportunity to do an analysis.
None of this initial goes towards it, only surplus.
So like,
additional.
So if you increase any of these by, let's say you just do $1 more for each one across the board,
that balance goes.
That additional funding, would that be hard to administer? So like if right now you're getting $2 per night and it goes to $3 per night, being able to separate out 2 to the current allocation and 1 to the new allocation?
Yeah, I just want to I want to define infrastructure a little bit more.
I was saying the water and sewer at the last meeting, because that's what, that if we can reduce, because not only did we increase the monthly cost to the residents at the last meeting based on that direction, but we anticipate it going up every year going forward. So if this can reduce that increase, maybe not eliminate it, but
help offset.
would be helpful.
Yeah.
That would be my suggestion.
Is that kind of what you were also thinking, Jim?
My biggest point with this in our conversation earlier was, how do we help locals? How do we help them where they need it most?
Yeah.
And if we're going to increase expenses across the board because we have to, how do we come up with creative ways to offset some of those increases? And this, to me, was one, when I saw it in the packet, it's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
And you know, to Dana's point, having traveled cross country, this is $2 a night to be $4 a night. Not
So
saying that, I'm saying it.
room in Silverton right now is $114 a night.
$114.50.
Say that again, what'd you say?
Hotel room, to book a hotel, if let's just say the hotel room is $100 a night in Silverton, someone's gonna go to the checkout and they're gonna check out and it's gonna be $114.50
Currently.
And then, so they also have the opportunity to, like, a lot of people pass through fees.
Yeah.
I don't, and I don't think you do, but like a lot of people would, like, if there's an additional like $2 tax, then they'll just add that as an line item. They'll pass something along. I think on our bills, we just take that out of the 100. So the $14.50 goes to pay taxes. We keep 98 and $2 goes to the lodging tax.
But plenty of people would just make their $114 room.
Or like
Or
Airbnb
their room
automatically
is
pass it along.
$102 and then,
I
I know, I'm just
It's not,
to say, show how nominal.
with the rate of inflation right now, no one's got. They're not gonna.
Yeah. So can we get to, I mean, administratively, this is the quickest, we're all here sitting at this table, can we get to a dollar amount and have a new resolution? I mean, is that not the most efficient way to get this done? Great.
How hard is it to change the vacation home one? Like if we're saying we're gonna do a flat dollar increase for other categories, but on vacation homes, we want to do it by bedroom. Is that's a process. Like that's something where we probably would need to say this isn't like the vacation home increase isn't effective till like April 1st or something, so that there's time to figure out how.
We'll have to give everybody a heads up that that's what we're gonna do. And send out a notice and tell them, hey,
Then if extrapolate, if we were to change how we do the vacation, we would have to kind of create a tracking sheet for that to see how many We currently don't have a tracking sheet that shows
Mhm.
us that. We do have it from their application, so we would just have to take that over and then create that sheet.
So is that increase in revenue worth the staff time to do that? That would be I mean, I know you can't answer that off the top of your head, but that'd just be the question.
And you would have to know how many people are renting
Right,
vacation homes
right,
per year.
exactly.
It's a percentage that we would just have to calculate and allocate somewhere else.
Yes.
It's not that complicated.
And then the other note that I don't know how we solve in the future is that it's all self-reported,
Yeah.
right? So like, even, and it's not like, I don't think we even audit it. So like, you have to, the same way we do express bill pay, like you don't even get a notice. You just go on to the same platform and each month you submit how many room nights, it calculates the room nights or how many bed nights or whatever it is against the fee that's associated with your property.
And one of the things that
So
you
like
might
if
see
somebody-
happening with vacation homes is they're like, yeah, well, we rented it, but we only had one of our 8 bedrooms or 6 bedrooms filled. So if you're doing by bedroom, then there's an easy way to skirt it, especially if it's self-reported.
Well, it wouldn't be occupied bedroom. It's just how many. bedrooms are
Okay,
in the
just,
house.
okay, so you're renting that now. Okay, perfect.
As
Have that
it's like,
capacity.
originally, it was just a flat fee for the vacation.
Yeah. Okay, copy that.
It's just per night rented, really.
Okay.
The same way it's like RV spots are per night rented, not how many people are in the RV or how big the RV is.
Mhm. Mhm.
I certainly didn't want to complicate matters tonight. I just wanted to be creative and find money.
I think it's a great idea.
So $1 increase or $2 increase? Just putting numbers out there. And then the vacation home, separate discussion. We're talking about,
So
RV.
$115 a night or $116 a night?
Yeah.
$2 a night.
Yeah, I think 2 is a good place.
What I'm thinking. $2 a night,
Increase
bring it up to 4.
just for hotel rooms.
Hotel rooms for campsites or RV space.
That'll be 3.
So $2 across the board.
Each category.
And even vacation,
Oh, yeah.
bring it up to 6.
Put vacation homes up to 6.
That makes sense?
Makes sense to me.
Is there a reason why, I mean, I don't want to create enemies here, but is there a reason why the RV spaces are as low as they are? Because the amounts that they charge per night are the same or more than a lot of our hotel rooms.
I think that's a fair point.
Was this based on like other communities and what they were charging? And is that why that is what it is? I don't remember.
That's pre-me.
If I had to guess, and I've no business guessing, but if I had to guess, I would say that back when this was first set up, like you're paying for campsites that are like $10 a night and
Yeah.
RV spots that are like $40 a night. But
It's no longer.
the world, like people are traveling in $300,000.
Yeah. 300,000.
Like
Right.
homes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And paying,
See $100,000 fees.
I feel like we're going to be perceived as doing things a little bit on the fly.
Yeah.
By arbitrarily picking these numbers. Whatever, it's not a
They
huge.
probably somewhat arbitrarily picked in the past.
Yes.
And
Which isn't a reason to do something.
no, it's not. But I do think there's perfect justification to say there's efficiency gained by the board being here and that we don't need to send staff to go do research on what 5 other communities do.
And that we are going to be in a crisis with our water.
And that
We're really looking
might
for
be
funding.
ways to offset costs for locals.
Yes.
And I think the specificity of what this additional income, saying like, this is this additional income, it's not really a surplus.
It's used specifically for this thing, though. It's not, we're not just taking it and then just.
And then saying like, we want it to be for whatever our heart's desire.
Yep. I
I
personally.
mean, that
feel
really matters to
inclusive.
me. I do want to emphasize that.
Yeah, that it's focused. It's for a purpose.
Well, and I actually think it makes sense because we get X amount of visitors every summer that use the water and sewage infrastructure
Yeah.
and are not necessarily paying into that. The infrastructure is struggling to support the people that live here, let alone the huge influx we see every summer. I think it makes a lot of sense.
I would caveat that all of those homes and businesses are paying into the water and sewer, but I don't know that they're doing it proportionally.
But
Right,
I,
and it
and
is a
I
way-
mean the visitors, not the people owning the homes.
Right, but I'm saying like, those people are getting their money from the visitors and then paying the money into the water and sewer already, so it's not like there's zero contribution, but it is, I think it could be more proportionate. It's just clarification, not a disagreement.
I feel comfortable defending this approach personally.
So would you like me to come back with you all with a new resolution at the next meeting to pass? With that $2 increase across the board?
Is it possible to approve it as revised if it's that straightforward? And so the board would like to do $2 a night addition to the vacation homes as opposed to a per room to just ease the administration. And maybe next summer or sometime next year, you can revisit if you want to make it more specific.
Yeah, I wouldn't change any of the verbiage, just change that 4 to a 6 and that 2 to a 4, and that 1 to a 3. Everything else should stay the same. And then add in there that the additional revenue goes to the community to offset some of these new costs that people are gonna start incurring.
With water and sewer.
Correct.
I think it would be helpful in the future to defend the decision that sounds like we're likely to make tonight when there's capacity to find out how long we've had these rates as they are.
Yeah,
Because if they've been the same for like 25 years.
then we need to probably go even higher.
But if someone's like, oh my God, you just doubled the rate for this and you tripled the rate for camping, like, I think to defend it, it'd be helpful to have that information, but.
Sure, I can find that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I would like to know.
So are we saying, is the board in agreement to pass this resolution tonight with the amendments of $6 for vacation homes, $4 per night per hotel room, and $3 per night for campsite or RV space? $3 per night? Yeah.
I did a bad job abstaining.
Is,
643. Yep.
yeah, okay, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2022-19 for lodging fees with the amendments of changing the amounts to $6 for vacation homes, $4 per night per hotel room, and $3 per night for campsite or RV space.
Plus the allocation of those increases too.
Plus the allocation of those increased revenues to water and sewer infrastructure.
Second.
Clayton, does that all sound good? Let's get a quick check.
I liked it.
Great.
Be the first one we charge.
Okay.
When does this become effective?
Right, it's a resolution, so it becomes effective immediately.
We're gonna need to do a,
We need to do
Should we give
Meeting.
all these that will be affected by this,
January
notice?
1st would be a great one, or February 1st,
Yeah.
something like that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Melina is waiting patiently.
I just didn't know if we adopt this, it's immediately effective, then we also have to think about how it gets noticed and when.
that's what I'm saying.
Hey.
It should be, there'd be some sort of
February 1st.
I think that
February 1st.
February 1st would be
February 1st.
most fair, and that way we have time to send out notices.
Okay, with implementation of this new fee structure by February 1st.
second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Edwards,
Yes.
Granger,
Yes.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
Trustee Birma,
Yes.
Trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
Is that clear, Gloria? Okay.
There's mud.
Whew. Thanks, Jim.
Next item on our agenda is item 4F, 2024 Town County Governmental Service Agreement.
I'm still writing notes from that
Oh, yeah,
last
take your
one.
time.
Take a lot more coffee.
All right, so last meeting you all had asked why the sheriff's contract and the fire authority couldn't be included in this agreement. So I put that in your memo. I had talked to Willie about it. But basically, the town and the county established fire authority as a separate entity. The reason why we do have some of the shared services in our IGA for the fire department is because the county oversees that portion of it, but they don't oversee the entire budget. And then for the, do you have any questions on that one? Sorry. Okay, and then for the other one was for the sheriff's department, the sheriff needs to sign that document as well, and that's why we have a separate agreement with our law enforcement.
Thank you for looking into that. I know that you had 1,000 things to do already, and I asked that question at the last minute, so I appreciate
Well,
it.
I had never seen the agreement for the fire authority before because that was done so long ago, so that it was actually a good exercise.
Surprised you found it.
In the ball. I think to Shane's point, this raised for me kind of a bigger thing that I think I'd like to see for the next period. And I don't think, again, it doesn't apply right now, but I would like to make a request that we have a improved way of kind of reporting to the community as a whole between the town and the county, overall spending on shared services, overall spending on the variety of EMS, fire department, sheriff, fund balances that we have, because a lot of these revenues are collected at the county level, and we also have the contributions from the town. So I think probably we're all confused. I think that community members are confused. Maybe some of the departments are confused. So I would just like to put an appeal, and maybe this gets workshopped through the finance committee over the next year, but put that we have some way between the town and county agreed of a table or a narrative or something. And I really appreciated Willie's narrative in here. I think that provided a lot of clarity for those of us who haven't been here historically when all these things were worked out. But I just think we don't have a lot of great communication around fund balances for the tax revenue that we are collecting for the emergency services tax, and the variety of budgets that get presented to the county versus the town. And I think looking at all those agreements, I think we also could have more reporting from some of these partners of just like, let's start to institutionalize a new process where sometime at the beginning of the fall, or when things slow down a little bit from the summer, we hear from the ambulance association, we hear from the sheriff, we hear from the fire department, kind of call volume, what they're seeing, reporting, and we as town and county can share with community revenue generated, revenue collected through the tax fund, and all the variety of budgets. So I don't know how succinct or clear that was, but I think we could do better.
Yeah, because what I hear you saying is kind of creating a level of transparency that allows the public to understand what's happening in each of the departments, as well as create an awareness around how much these things actually cost.
Yeah.
So that there really is, I mean, as much as there's transparency, there's kind of equal part, just that's what that's what the EMS. And I think the more we are aware of the actual costs of the services, the more we can support them.
Yeah.
And really really understand, like, on a fundamental level, what they need to grow and succeed and be effective for the community.
Yeah. Well, and I think increased reporting is really helpful to sell the story, because we have seen a huge increase in visitors in this area. I think when Deanne, I use this as an example, but it stood out to me when Deanne came and presented like numbers of people that go through the visitor center. I was shocked. I thought like, wow, we're staffing this visitor center for this many days. Is that really what we need to do? And then realizing what kind of user experience we're seeing, how many people are going through those stores, what it looks like, that information helped help inform me for future discussions around how the town and we support this experience. And I think the same could be said for our shared services with our law enforcement partners, our fire authority, and our ambulance association, in like telling the story on visitor increases, call volume. And if we hear from those partners every year, it helps the community know what's happening. It helps the town and the county know what's happening.
And I've done a bad job coming to the town. So every year I have to go in front of the county and renew our ground ambulance license. And every year I go and I do give them a report, and it would be very easy to bring that same presentation over here.
Which you have
I can
done.
do,
Well, that was 2 years, 2 years ago.
so to one up that a little bit,
Implied.
not my idea, but multiple community members asked if we could schedule two like budget sessions jointly with the county.
Yeah.
Where those shared services just present once, so that community members can just listen to those meetings.
Yeah.
And also so the representatives
Yeah.
of those shared services don't have to do double.
As
presentation.
long as we can get our ground ambulance license, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be
Yeah, that's
wonderful.
an efficiency creator.
Yeah.
So that's just a plug for next year. I just think we could do better. We share these services. There's overlap. There's revenues collected at the county level. I think we all leave quite confused, and I'm not sure everybody's getting their needs met, and I think we could fund things more effectively. But put a pin in it for, I don't know, Tyler, September? What's the timing? When?
Well, we have to reapply for our ground ambulance license in March every year. The state is changing it a little bit this year, whereby the state is going to license us, but the county has to approve it. It's ridiculous, but we will be going back in front of the county. Or is it March or April? I'd have to double check.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I think that will help aid in the overall transparency as well.
Cool. Now, with respect to the intergovernmental agreement itself, do we have any discussions or comments or questions?
Just to clarify, under the service item, we have fire protection, but just clarifying that's the escrow.
Correct, yeah, that's the 20,000 split between the town and the county, that is the escrow.
Yeah.
Which we could be more clear on that for the next year.
And I did get this question from someone in the public about the carriage house and whether I don't think, because I didn't see it in any of our budget, other budget line items, but right now there's just the insurance in there. That building is paid off, correct? Like we're not still to have the event service on it, right?
For
Carriage house?
Oh, the carriage house. Yeah, no, so they're in Willie's thing, he was talking about the actual fire department building, but not the carriage house.
Yeah. But the carriage house, we're not still paying.
No.
Yeah.
It was
Oh. I'll adjust that formatting. I had to change Austin's name, so that formatted funny.
Well, would someone like to make a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the intergovernmental agreement between the town and San Juan County for shared services in 2024.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Edwards?
Yes.
Trustee Cranker?
Yes.
Trustee Harper?
Yes.
Trustee Beerman?
Yes. Yes.
Burton Barney?
Yes.
Mayor Furman?
Yes. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is new business, item 4G, 2024 Town County Law Enforcement Agreement.
So this agreement is very similar to last year's agreement, but I have included the letter that the trustees share, requesting more data with future funding requests. And as instructed, I did not include the town's portion of the new position in the budget. As you'll see, there's an amended budget in your packet. As I was looking through the last budget that they proposed, it didn't make sense of what was the new position. And so they amended their budget. None of the actual bottom lines changed. It was how it was presented.
But we did include the additional.
All the other increases to their budget was included except for our portion of the new position.
Do we have any trustee comments or questions? Discussion?
I think for me, I still feel comfortable with how we funded it, funding the operational budget increases. I appreciated feedback we received. I think there's really a case to be made, and I would just encourage for more information we request from the sheriff. I think there's really a case to be made on just kind of call volume increases, overall staffing. And so I think if we can hold off on funding that for now, I think it's a big support for our overall operating budget right now. Kind of see where it goes in the future.
My question would be, I agree with that. Like if we did that now, that's fine. If they gathered up a bunch of data from the last 3 years and came and gave us a, presentation in 2 months, then could we go back and try and reallocate funds in case we were like, oh yeah, this is clearly a need for a new position? Or
Yeah, you can do a supplemental budget.
So-
on.
I'm certainly very open-minded to additional information. Personally.
I'm feeling similarly.
I think something I learned through this process was taking a closer look at the actual contract that we have with law enforcement, and we had a fairly robust discussion about this in a previous meeting, and looking at the items in that contract made me think about what's the town's role in holding any agency or organization accountable for the services that they provide for us. And if we have a contract and it specifies what we expect, and that's our role as the town board. I think about, I've been sitting here for almost 4 years now, and I think that's the first time I've really analyzed the sheriff's contract and thought about, what does the sheriff department need? What is we've talked about issues, and we've talked about little, issue by issue, but sort of globally and long-term. And when we think about sustainability and what's the relationship between the town and the law enforcement department, I do think that the town board has a responsibility to uphold the terms of the contract. And so I think that's a really important place to start. And then I do think that to justify and approve expense increases, just like we would with any other agency or organization, looking at spreadsheets, looking at numbers, understanding the data, that's going to be what we use to justify that increase. And I think that's the bottom line. And I think that's our responsibility as stewards of public money. And not in an oppositional way, not in a way of being difficult or like an annoying, I don't know, like a bad boss. I think it's really just our responsibility.
I'm ready to be persuaded with data.
Yeah.
Open to Tyler's suggestion, but I do think we need data. I think every other agency we work with provides data. I did, unless I'm missing something, I did see that the numbers in the memo for the approved sheriff's budget are different than the number in section 2 for the dollar amount.
Yeah, I think I put the wrong one in your packet.
Okay. In the memo.
Yeah.
So the memo doesn't match the actuals, but the actuals are the actuals.
Wait.
Well, the question is the memo correct, or is the contract correct, or neither correct? Because the memo talks about the budget being 309,271. The contract has 322,471.
The memo is correct. I will amend the contract.
Catch.
Thank you for catching that.
Yeah, thank you for putting all this together. And I would say that if there's something in our letter that, because we bullet pointed 4 pieces of data that we were looking for, if there's something in there that isn't being tracked or is impossible to track, like just let us know why, and we can reevaluate what we're asking for.
Yeah, and there may be a data point that we're unaware of that's already being tracked and that may be useful and.
We don't know what we don't know.
Totally.
And help us help you. Like, it's not meant to be onerous or burdensome. It's meant to help inform the discussion and make the case.
Do we have any other discussion, questions, comments? Or do you need any further clarification, Gloria?
No, I'm good, thank you. I will adjust that number in there. I gave you guys the working one. Yeah, all cool.
Do we need a motion or you give direction?
We need a motion to approve the 2024 Town County Law Enforcement contract as.
Did everyone get to review the letter submitted by the sheriff?
Do you have any comments or thoughts about that?
Oh, no, I'm just asking. Say one thing. There are certain line items in any budget that you'd want to go through and that you'd probably want to scrutinize more than others. I can say for me, looking at this and looking at it from a personal aspect and seeing what I've seen over the past 10 years of living here, and to me, law enforcement is important. It's not just important to those who are affected, but it's important to all of us. And if we can be, again, I'm going to use that creative word in funding this and getting the sheriff what he needs, while sticking to our guns. I don't know if I should say that as appropriate. While sticking to our guns and having certain benchmarks, like, hey, we need these reports, we need to see these numbers, but we're going to give you what you need. To me, law enforcement's not one of those. It's like healthcare and medicine. This is a true public service that the community needs and deserves. And I have a really hard time looking at this, and our sheriff has asked several times over several budgetary sessions, year over year, requesting additional money, additional training, equipment. And I'm not going to say we've said no, we haven't, but we've been less reluctant, or more reluctant, I should say, in providing that. I would like to see him get the money he's asking. And I don't know if it's done incrementally or in one shot. I shouldn't have said that. But I really do want to see our law enforcement get fully funded. I do. They put themselves on the line for each and every one of us. And his letter it pushed me in a direction that I was already leaning towards, but it really pushed me much further. Yeah, that's my final comment. Thank you, Sally, for asking. Thank you.
I appreciated the comparisons to neighboring counties, but yeah. Again, we have the current agreement, and with what we're asking through that, we should be able to figure out if we need to supplement that budget with reporting from him, from the sheriff.
I don't get the sense that anyone on the board doesn't want to fund that. I just think that we have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure we can provide data to the community as well for the services.
Absolutely. And that goes to my comment about there are certain benchmarks in the contract that need to be met. And if we're gonna fully fund this thing, and if we're gonna give the sheriff what he needs, then there needs to be that reciprocity, and we need to get those numbers and those reports. That give us the reasoning to fully fund this. So yeah, I'm with you there.
Well, I think that's why agreeing to fund the operational budget increases feels like a no-brainer to me. That gets us a good part of the way. And with a little bit more information as specified in the contract and then clarified, or as outlined in the contract and then specified in the letter that we provided, I think that gives more reference points. So I consider myself a very reasonable, open-minded person that with the information presented in front of me, I can make a more informed decision. So I would be very open to reconsidering this budget line item. I feel like it is the kind of getting us to a good point to approve the operational budget increases and have a little bit more information about the staffing increases. That's my perspective on kind of a compromise of where we could go.
Okay.
So would someone like to make a motion or where are we at?
I feel like is there any more discussion?
Sure.
Well, no, I'm asking.
Okay, and I'm saying, sure, we could do that too. Yeah.
I feel like the wheels are turning. Everyone's got the looks on their face. If there's a better way to come about this, I'm very open to it, but I would like to see them get fully funded. And I know that we have approached the request each year from the sheriff's office, and maybe we've been a little bit more I don't want to use the word difficult, but I think we've scrutinized it a little bit more, because going to your point about getting those certain numbers, having those communications and having sheriff here with us. But I think that just lends to the point that he's not available to do those things because of the short staff, because of the fact that he's spending so much time on the road. And are those needs. And I know what those guys do, the men and women of their sheriff's department. And I would hate to not fund this because we're trying to look at the overall budget. This to me is a no-brainer. But again, if it's done incrementally, if it's done, in two tranches, phase one, phase two, we're going to fund this half now and half later, or just this portion of it now and this portion later on. But I do feel that we as a community owe our sheriff's department that much to fund this.
I'm having a hard time. I'm going to say the awkward thing. I'm having a hard time participating in this discussion because I feel like I could be targeted by the sheriff's department if I am in opposition to what you're saying. But he's in breach of contract, and we're not asking for anything. We're not asking for more. I don't think we're scrutinizing this more than any other partner that we have. We in fact, when we first started, I feel like we had similarly limited transparency with the fire department, and we went to bat about, and if you want your budget increase, we need to see better reporting. And they immediately responded and have become an exemplary partner in terms of their reporting. And all we're saying,
I'm not in disagreement.
Yeah, and all we're saying is if you're gonna, this wasn't a small percentage budget increase. If we said yes to the small percentage, if this was, an 8 or a 10% increase, but this is a massive percentage increase, and to justify something like that and to create, and I believe there's 2 new positions. There's an administrative position as well as a full law enforcement person. I think to say, other than anecdotally, we don't have enough staff to have people go on vacation, get sick, or go to training without other people working doubles. That's the only data point we have to support the budget increase. But I don't think that anything we asked for is that cumbersome to come up with. In fact, I think the dispatch has one of the bullet points that I don't even think the sheriff's department would have to go out to get. They could just say, hey, dispatch, what are those numbers?
Zip us over those figures.
Yeah, and the time it took to write the letter that we received today
Mhm.
probably is greater than it would have taken to at least get some of the data requested. And that's,
And like I'm saying, maybe we fund one position now and put the other one on hold. I'm just looking at what those men and women do. And I think they deserve our full support. That's all I'm saying.
but I think our compromise was what we did fund their budget, or we are beginning to fund the budget increase for the other stuff. Like they had specific line items they wanted to spend money on, and we said yes to that. And these other things, which also have significant lead time, as whether or not we fund that tonight or say we're funding that tonight, those are earmarked dollars that take months to fill those positions. Like there's plenty of time, like Tyler suggested, for us to be provided with the data we asked for the board to make a decision to increase the budget.
Well, by all means, I'm not.
The way that doesn't have actual negative impact to the sheriff at all. Like the sheriff can go out and recruit for these positions while, attempting to provide this data. And if they actually find somebody good, they can come in and be like, hey, we have a person, they want to move to Silverton, or they already live in Silverton, and here's the data you guys asked for. Like, can we get the funding for this position? I'd be surprised if the board in that situation is still like,
And from my perspective, Jim, we need to be consistent in our treatment of the partners.
Okay.
Like if anyone else was in breach of contract, then I think we would also be following up this way. And really, that's what it's about, is making sure that we get the data so that we can fulfill the fiduciary responsibility that we have to the people of town. And I don't think it has anything to do with like whether you want or don't want, like
I think that's a fair statement.
I want to
It's a
see
fair
this
statement.
funded, but I also want to have the data that we need. And last time we talked about this, we wanted to make sure it wasn't overly onerous or too tedious to get that. So going back to what you said about dispatch has a lot of these numbers.
Well, like I said, I'm not trying to be combative.
Yeah, so we left the request out of the contract. I think to sort of allow ourselves as a board to communicate the things that would help us support these decisions while supporting the sheriff's department and the, demands that are currently on the sheriff's department to just meet the terms of the contract. And the items on our list are reporting the number of calls per quarter with, in-town limit. Oh, sorry, I just need to read it. The number of calls per quarter with the calls in town limits broken out from the calls in the county, so separation of town and county. The number of training hours by the department per quarter, how many hours staffed per quarter, updated quarterly year-to-date financials. So those are the 4 bullet points of kind of like paint a picture. I was kind of surprised by the tone of the email. I thought it was a bit more adversarial than allied, because these are organizations that we partner with. And I think, to see each other as adversaries, I think is a detriment to the service to the community. And so I actually expected the letter to sort of take a turn for, this is my experience. This is sort of a personal take on how I've been managing my budget and what's been happening. And this is the feedback I've received from other communities. And to your request, here's some information, or this is an overview of what I know to date or for this quarter, or I can get started with this piece of data for you here. And I think I was just surprised that that didn't come through in that email, given the requests of our letter. And I think we haven't really changed the funding that we've provided the sheriff year in and year out, because nothing has changed from the sheriff's department perspective. We haven't received.
You mean as far as the reporting?
The reporting,
Oh.
yeah, like year by year, we're saying, okay, well, to justify it, but a large budgetary expense, this is gonna come to these things. So, it's kind of like keep doing the same thing, keep getting the same results type of situation. But I think that's why I think our letter is useful. It describes precisely the details that, we would want to see. And I think it's fair. And I don't think it's over the top. And I think to Shane's point, regarding the discussion of the sheriff budget, I was surprised in one of our work sessions, the personal nature of one of the issues that he brought to us. And it made it really uncomfortable and incredibly awkward, I think, to try and have a discussion about law enforcement, because sitting at this table, we're responsible for our budget. We're responsible for spending public funds. And then when we leave this building and we walk home and we have a dog off the leash, or we, park our car on the wrong side of the road, we're regular citizens. And I thought that the personal nature of the case that the sheriff was talking about in a previous meeting made me really uncomfortable serving in those dual roles. And I think that that's unfortunate.
I think too, we have this challenge that happens, and Jim, I appreciate your kind of feedback and support. I think the challenge we have is that when we talk about transparency, accountability, and funding, especially for our services like our ambulance, our fire, and our sheriff, it's very hard to have those transparent discussions as a board because of the point Sally has raised, and also just because, of course, we all want to support the essential services that have to happen in this community for the health, safety, and well-being of our citizens, of ourselves. And so I think it's challenging to have those hard conversations when it comes to changes in expectations, questions for transparency and accountability. It's hard to have those community discussions. That's part of what our job is here, but that's hard. But I think the request that the town board came up with in our letter for reporting and kind of more feedback is reasonable, in the same way that when I come back to our IGA before and I'm sitting here next to Sally and saying, hey, it'd be great to hear from the Ambulance Association once a year. It'd be great for the community. It's for the community, and we're representing the community here, which includes our law enforcement partners as community members and as service providers. And so I just hope that the tone of the conversation is more in partnership. And to Liv's point, we have to kind of have these dual pieces of having the fiduciary responsibility of like holding the contract that we have and partnering well with our partners that provide essential services in our community.
Well, not just get hung up on this idea of consistency. Like when I first moved here, something that a lot of people said is that there wasn't any consistency and that different agencies were treated different ways. And I think that we have a responsibility to be consistent.
So that, I think this is great. So communication and dialogue, and I want to thank everybody for chiming in.
So where I felt the biggest disconnect from the sheriff's letter today was the sentence that says, while I do not believe that it is the right course for our community, I'm also not inclined to become micromanaged by a revolving door of trustees that are uncaring to the issues our agency faces, nor to set precedent for future sheriffs to be placed in these uncomfortable shoes. And that to me just sounds like a major disconnect, because I haven't experienced anything throughout our conversation where I feel like we are micromanaging the sheriff's department by sending the data that we asked for. That for me doesn't feel like micromanagement. That just feels like we fleshed out a contractual requirement that was already there. And I think the only thing we've done that could be perceived as uncaring is by not saying immediate yes to the budget amount. But I don't believe, like we've been talking about, that it has to do, like none of us have expressed anything but support for law enforcement. And so I don't know where our disconnect is with law enforcement that caused that sentence to be included, but it did make me think, and triggered further when you said consistency. Do we have any other agencies that we require quarterly reporting from? And do we need quarterly reporting of that data, knowing that they're very taxed in terms of time in order to make these types of budget decisions? Because what I really need to make these decisions is that data, but I need it on like an annual or biannual basis.
Right.
So like, is there a compromise here where we actually consider revising the contract to take out the quarterly reporting and making it biannual or annual, but also maybe adding in these bullet points to specifically say what we're looking for? And is that something that might be acceptable to both parties so that he doesn't feel micromanaged?
But I think, and it also sets up future boards, better communication.
Right. Well, and I would argue that by having consistent reporting, it takes it out of this ping pong of what one board thinks versus the next. It just has, with all of our partners, again, back to all of our IGA and our shared services, we have standards. And I think we're moving in that, right? We're moving in baby steps. I mean, Gloria and team have done an amazing job when it comes to just tightening up our year by year contract agreements, which are our partner agencies versus our, nonprofit requests. Like, we're working towards all that transparency, accountability, predictability for everybody involved. And so I think if we could move towards more consistent reporting, requesting from these various members, it would just benefit everybody. Because I felt like when we sat down and had the fire chief here, when we had the sheriff here, it really wasn't clear from either entity what the board needed to make a decision, what information needed to be provided. And so I think just the more clarity that we have is helpful, and the more consistency, and then we avoid that very point that I think the sheriff is bringing up of like ping ponging from one board to the next of what the standard is.
Totally. And I just want to see like a consistent process for these partner organizations. And I'm also a data oriented person. It helps me feel better about making these kinds of decisions when I can actually see the numbers. I'd like to see them for all of these agencies, not just the sheriff. And I feel totally comfortable with it being on an annual or biannual basis. It doesn't have to be quarterly.
Yeah. Agreed.
And what are the EMS reporting requirements to county and town?
We report to the county once a year.
When
we go to do when we do our ambulance licensing is when I do a presentation and report.
And you gave that same report to us last year, I think.
I gave it to, last year. I didn't, or 2 years ago. Or last year, not this. I didn't do it this year. I did it last year. And then we also have state reporting requirements, which are monthly. So because that's already set up into our service, it does make it easier kind of for us, because I can just be like, oh, look, this is what we had to report to the state. I can just take these out and build you a quarter and send it. And I don't know if it's as easy for the sheriff's department to do that.
So in summary, what I'm hearing is Tyler's initial suggestion quite a while ago now is that with some additional information as requested in our letter, the board is open to reconsidering the full budget amount. Jim suggested that we consider the full budget amount tonight. Has anyone's opinion changed about the two suggestions? Where are we at?
About half the budget tonight, and we propose the reporting.
To do what?
Sorry. What if we approved half of the amount for the position tonight? Because it was two, right?
It's just one position.
It's just one position.
Yeah.
I thought there were two positions. I thought there was an administrative position.
I thought it was just one. That's why I was.
I was under the impression from the last meeting that I was only to cut one position at the amount that we would pay into it.
Okay, so I think I'm confused.
Does funding half a position do anything helpful there?
That might.
And
I just wanted to make a show of good faith was really the idea behind that.
I think in my opinion, the show of good faith is saying that we'll consider it when we get some data.
And the approval
As opposed to being like,
that
come
we
back next
already
year.
did.
Operational budget increases already. Yeah.
But we're all welcome to have different opinions about what that should be.
Well, I was confused about the positions because I thought there were two, so.
Well, and I think there is an argument to be made for the town budget. Like, if one of our goals in our budgeting process is to have a certain amount of reserves for emergencies, right? To have cash on hand or available in reserves. And so there isn't anybody hired right now, right? And so that money can still sit there, and we can put out there that we are open to reconsidering based off of feedback, data, and input from the sheriff's department, and updating the contract to include annual reporting according to these specifications. So I guess my argument would be, why don't we just continue to approve the operational budget increases as we have said, that 309 number, I think, and then change the reporting requirements in the contract and provide an.
To annually.
Are we all comfortable with annual reporting? And hopefully that will make the burden less.
And then in addition, if the board was to receive additional data or input to further justify the staffing increase, we would reconsider it at a future point. Like, there'll be annual reporting just as part of the contract, but additional information would help to support the justification of additional staff. Does that make sense, or kind of two separate?
I support that, but I also wanted to speak up for staff earlier that I don't think it's nothing to do a supplemental budget in terms of administration and time. Is that correct?
Not as arduous as you would think. It's just if you start going over multiple line items, that's when it gets a little complicated.
But if it's just the one.
Did we have something else earlier? Didn't we have something else we did this to earlier tonight?
The letter?
Well, we're moving the firework.
The fireworks were moving. That's
But
not.
that's not-
yeah.
Was there anything else that was?
The libraries to the letter. Is that weird?
Well, we completed that one, but was there anything else that we said, if this, then that sometime in the future? No, because in the lodging stuff, we decided everything. Okay.
I did look up in the lodging fee, we're gonna have to amend our ordinance as well, so we're gonna need a new ordinance. So it might not be done by February, just wanted to let you know that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so we are in agreement that annual reporting is great and we can update the contract with that. Do we also want to have a conversation with Willie and the sheriff and their attorney about adding the substance of what's included in the annual reporting, or are we just good to leave annual reporting and have our letter out there as providing context around what we're looking for?
Well, I thought we were looking for specific numbers, specific information.
And the question is, do we want to direct Gloria and make the motion to attempt to revise the contract to include that? Or are we comfortable just changing quarterly to annual and then having our letter provide that like additional
That's the
context?
level of specificity.
So to avoid further difficulties in negotiating.
Right. I'll leave it up to you guys.
Or more admin time.
I think it's really clear to just leave it in the letter
Mhm.
and leave it out of the contract.
Great. Okay, so annual reporting is the only change to the contract we're talking about. So then the only open thing is, what do we want to do about the actual budget? And just out of curiosity, is this outside of the budget that we already approved, or are we kind of like stuck with? Like, shouldn't this discussion this discussion really should have been had
Prior to the budget approval.
during the main budget discussion as opposed to now. And if
Yeah.
we make that decision now, we're already changing.
In a supplemental.
I just feel more comfortable with the approved budget in the memo and then discussions happening in the future. We're gonna have more information in future months on our revenue. We're gonna have more information on ability of sheriff to recruit. I feel like I would be willing to signal like willingness to have that discussion in the future. I guess I'm just not super set on committing it in the budget right now. Based on the previous discussions we've had, but that's.
Yeah, because I think it doesn't preclude us from returning to it in a couple of months. And I think if the sheriff's department kind of did what Shane sort of laid out and said, we found this person, they are here, they're ready to move to Silverton. This is what we're seeing. This is how this will work. This is once that is more of a certainty, I think there's clear willingness on the part of the board to support that direction for the sheriff's department. But I think in terms of our budget bottom line, we're continuing to have that money contribute to our reserve bottom line number is a good use of that fund.
As I also think about the details of like how this would play out, I don't know what the county decided, but if the county approved the whole budget, including the positions, then they have 4 months of runway as well. So not only do they have recruiting runway, but they have 4 months of, I mean, I guess that's not how it works because we would be asked to pay for 60% of each month if their budget increased. But in terms of actual dollars allocated,
If the county allocates it.
if the county
The
did,
county's allocated their portion of the additional staffing increase expense.
I just don't see what we're asking as being unreasonable or arduous. And if it is, I would like to know why, as opposed to just being told that it's not appropriate.
I do agree.
All right, we should put it to a vote now. I'm fine with that. If we as the board are willing to readdress this in a couple of months or sooner, depending on if and when the sheriff can get us this information, I think it's great.
I was ready to be persuaded today. I opened the letter. I thought,
yes.
Well, and I think just for context for the sheriff, I think having some understanding of how like enforcing OHV routes versus not, all of that is helpful information, because as I'm looking at historic data on law enforcement, and unless my numbers are wrong, you know, in 2017, we have 230K, 2018, 189K, 2019, 309K. So like at 2019, we see a significant increase. And then 2020, 2021, and 2022 were all like 230, 279, 295. And I think those are some of those reasons are because staff wasn't hired, or they had open positions, or there were times where they weren't able to fill certain positions, so we got funding refunded. And then now we're back up to 306K. Or if we funded the position 350. But I think we need more context around all of those changes throughout the years and what they're seeing in their department, what we're seeing in town based on what's happened. So just providing a lot of context, I think, would be helpful.
okay. So would someone like to make a motion that includes the administrative revision of the dollar amount in the contract, as well as the change from quarterly reporting to annual reporting, and otherwise, I didn't say it in a way that I think can just be said so moved, but would someone like to, I'm just kind of earmarking the changes we talked about. Ready for that, or is there more thoughts or questions that we need to hash out?
Yeah, let's go ahead and move on this.
Jordan, how are you feeling over there?
I know I'm in the low chair, so I can't see you, Jordan.
Annual reporting and waiting to get some data.
Okay, so motion to approve the 2024 town and county law enforcement contract with the quarterly reporting amended to annual and the approved 2024 sheriff budget amount.
Second. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Edwards?
Yes.
Trustee Kränker?
Yes.
Trustee Harper?
Yes.
Trustee Birma?
Yes.
Trustee George?
Yes.
Pro Tem Barney?
Yes.
Mayor Furman?
Yes. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is new business item 4H, resolution 2023-20, a resolution designating a public place for posting meeting notices for the town of Silverton, Colorado for the 2024 calendar year.
And this is a pretty self-explanatory annual resolution that we are required to pass by state statutes and stating our physical location for posting meeting notices.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2023-20, a resolution designating a public place for posting meeting notices for the town of Silverton, Colorado for the calendar year 2024.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Nice.
Trustee Edwards?
Yes.
On the fly.
Yes.
Trustee Harper?
Yes.
Trustee Birma?
Yes.
Trustee George?
Yeah.
Pro Tem Barney?
Yes.
Mayor Furman?
Yes.
Wait, do I need to amend it? Is it not right?
In the resolution, it's fine. In the memo is 2020.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Good.
The next item on our agenda is new business item 4I, release the Kendall ski area vendor RFP.
All right, so this one snuck up on us last year. We had Elevated Coffee stepped in to help with the vending services for Kendall. But when we talked about it, we thought that it would be more transparent, moving forward to go out for an RFP. So staff is requesting to release this RFP, but only keep it open for 10 days so that we can get a vendor in place by our weekend opening. Hopefully it's our second weekend opening. And then staff is requesting to administratively evaluate the awarded RFP based on the scoring criteria identified in the RFP. But if it seems close, or if we have, multiple local vendors, we would also request maybe a special meeting potentially on the 21st or the 22nd that we could just zoom in and do a quick review of that, if you all would be okay with that.
I think that sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's lots of nodding.
Motion to approve the release of the Kindle vendor RFP and allow staff to score and administratively award the proposal.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Edwards.
Yes.
Trustee Craker.
Yes.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Birma.
Yes.
Trustee George.
Yes.
Trustee Barney.
Yes.
Yes. And I think that's fine because you have authority to do it administratively. And if you want to ask for the special meeting, there's nothing which prevents you from doing that.
Great, thank you.
Cool, thanks. So now we have new business added item 4J, which is a quick bit of context on the Lackawanna stakeholder meeting.
Sure. So I'll start with a little bit of background. And then I'm happy to provide additional context and answer any questions. In spring of 2023, we were awarded EPA multi-purpose grant for environmental assessment, cleanup, and revitalization of multiple sites within and around town, including the town core, which priority site was the Zanoni property. This is being addressed through a separate federal program right now. The Cement Creek Corridor, this priority site is the property owned by San Juan County, adjacent to County Road 110, just outside of town. And then the Animas River Corridor, which priority site is the Lackawanna Mill site and structure. So Greg Davis, our project officer from EPA, visited us in September, and we got to tour all the sites and talk about different opportunities. And he identified 2 opportunities for us to use to maximize the use of our budget and our grant. And one thing that we should note is that the EPA Brownfields program goes beyond the $800,000 that we have. It's a national program with tons of services and technical assistance to address different tasks within our work plan. And so Greg identified the targeted brownfield assessment for the environmental assessment and cleanup plan of the Zanoni property, which is underway. And then the land revitalization technical assistance program for the generation of conceptual designs of the Lackawanna Mill to aid in future reuse planning. And we received both, which is awesome. And both of these tasks are identified in our work plan. The Zanoni property work is almost complete and the land revitalization technical assistance is underway. So a little bit of background on the land revitalization technical assistance program. It's an EPA program specifically for brownfield sites. And the EPA contracts with firms such as ICF and awards eligible communities with a contract to collaborate to generate these visual conceptual plans of site reuse options to aid in reuse planning. This contract that we got is up in March, so it's a really quick process. But we went for it because it likely will not really come around again in a time that's convenient for us for planning. And the Lackawanna Mill was a great candidate for this technical assistance because it's been repeatedly identified as a priority for environmental assessment, cleanup, and revitalization. And since then, there have been multiple community visioning sessions identifying potential reuse of the site associated with different community plans, such as the Animas River Corridor Plan, the Trails Plan, the Kendall Mountain Master Plan, and then the RMPP we have with the BLM. The scope of this contract we have is to use existing documentation on reuse potential to generate visual conceptual plans to aid in future reuse planning at the Lackawanna Mill site. Reuse planning is a requirement before cleanup can occur, and this is identified within our work plan and was a factor that QEPs were judged on, which we can talk about later. And reuse planning requires a lot of community engagement. Greg Davis, our EPA project officer, identified this opportunity and applied on our behalf in an effort to save us money down the line and ultimately help us effectively use our budget. But to prepare for this project, I met with the Historical Society, with the BLM, with community members, and reviewed dozens of documents that were related to the Lackawanna Mill and its history. Fortunately, I personally was not around for previous community visioning, and ICF requested to meet with stakeholders. So we just got out of a stakeholder meeting discussing previous community visioning efforts. I did my best to invite people that I could see from my research that were involved in previous visioning efforts, as well as those who may be affected by potential reuse options that have been identified. And of course, unfortunately, not 100% of people could attend. However, community members will have multiple opportunities in the future to be a part of the reuse planning. ICF will do a site visit tomorrow, debrief with staff, and use this information, as well as the many documents I've reviewed to generate multiple conceptual designs. Once these designs are completed, Kansas State University, our brownfields technical assistant providers, will work with the community at large, staff, trustees, and our QEP, which we'll talk about later, to facilitate reuse planning and potentially identify a use for the Lackawanna Mill site. KSU will use these conceptual designs to help the visioning session. However, the town is in no way committed to these designs. If the community through reuse planning and beyond is attracted to a design that ICF generated, we can quickly work with an architect and an engineer to generate the construction plans required to begin the project after going through the appropriate town-county planning review process, as the site is within the town-county mutual overlay district. These plans would need to be prioritized by the community and the trustees before any work can be done to make them a reality. And that is my update, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And Sally was there, so if Sally wants to chime in on the stakeholder meeting, you're welcome to.
You gave us a lot. Let's
wanted to lay it all out there for the public, but happy to answer any other questions if anything wasn't addressed.
Can you clarify for my mind and maybe others too? So I understand this grant, this project is for creating conceptual plans. As far as the actual reuse of the property, that would involve a variety of environmental cleanup issues, right? Or projects. So is that funding or planning on the table as part of this larger brownfields grant?
Yeah, so in our work plan, what we would do is this is gonna really overgeneralize it, but we can look at the actual work plan. But basically what we would do is we would do a phase 1 and a phase 2, which are environmental assessments. We'd see all the contaminants that are in the area, and this has already been done. We'd have to redo it though. And then after that, we would look at those contaminants. Our QEP would make some recommendations. And then we would get together with potentially a brownfield committee that we might create and the community and identify reuse options related to the environmental assessments and previous work looking at reuse options. And then we would have basically a reuse planning session. And then that reuse planning session would be used to inform the cleanup plan, which is part of the end of the environmental assessment. And then whenever it is appropriate, that cleanup plan would happen. So sometimes cleanup plans happen as you're doing reuse work. Sometimes they can happen far before. So it would just depend on the contaminants, our next step plans, and then if additional funding is required for that specific reuse plan and what that looks like at the moment.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it's kind of like if it's like similar to the Zanoni parcels where we have to do certain things so we can use that actual land, and we have to do other things to think conceptually, how do we want to use this land?
Right. Yeah. And every site is just so different and so unique. It's just going to be different for every site.
Well, we can work on the conceptual plan even before any type of cleanup has started, or they can be done in tandem, or they're.
Yeah, and what's happening right now is just basically drawings of previous ideas for reuse.
Yeah.
And then the actual reuse planning will come later down the line. And then that will be our brownfields consultant will be much more involved in that, and will be facilitating part of that potentially with our technical assistance team as well.
So there was a lot of information. It was all super awesome. But to make sure that I'm following, I want to overgeneralize a bullet point. So we have the overarching brownfields grant and all of the process on all kind of the sub projects under that is highlighted in a master plan and a priority for us. Greg with the state applied for a technical assistance grant, which got awarded on our behalf.
Greg with EPA.
Greg with the EPA, which is super awesome initiative and amazingly helpful. And there was a really tight timeline on kind of putting everything in place to make sure that we could pursue that grant. And so
access that funding.
yeah. And so there was a stakeholder meeting tomorrow, or there was a meeting today and then a follow-up tomorrow. So one real quick question, interim summary is Sally's our representative because she was involved with some of the earlier brownfield stuff as well. Is the board happy, and are you happy to continue to be that representative? Or do we need to?
Yes, nothing. This was the stakeholder meeting that occurred was really just a one-time meeting to get the team up to speed and to get to interact with some community members that weren't just the staff. So that was the extent of the stakeholder group meeting, unless trustees we're welcome to come earlier and are welcome to join us tomorrow as well, if any of you are interested.
Yeah, so it's a publicly noticed meeting, right?
Tomorrow is just a site visit. There's no meeting involved.
We really can only
So
have
then
two
two of
trustees.
us.
Yeah.
I will not be attending tomorrow.
So is anyone available that would like to go tomorrow? Awesome.
I would love to, but I can't.
Okay.
Can't.
Yeah, I have previous work commitments.
Do that.
Field trip.
And then, so then continuing along. This sounds urgent to take advantage of. My next question is, if for some reason we didn't take advantage of this technical assistance grant, does that jeopardize the larger brownfields grant and other things in the process?
If we did not.
Like if we didn't move forward with this particular technical assistance grant and put time and energy in towards supporting this cleanup plan for Lackawanna right now. Is that like, what happens if we don't do that?
Potentially we could be spending more of our grant money towards the same product.
Because the reason I ask is we have I think we should do it. Subject to everybody else's opinion and our bandwidth, but I think we have a lot of things going on. And this one kind of crept up in terms of requiring staff and trustee time and facilitating meetings and future stakeholder groups and community groups as part of a larger project that we're definitely pursuing as a top priority. But this subset, I wasn't, other than the memo, I wasn't aware of, and I wanted to just check in with everybody and give us the opportunity to understand what the consequences are of doing it or not doing it, and making sure that this is something we have bandwidth for, as compared to all the other priorities that we already are committed to as well. And I think the obvious answer is, yes, we should do it. Yes, it's a priority. It's in the master plan. Yes, it's part of a larger project we're already pursuing. And yes, we should do it. But I just wanted to take that opportunity to say, I don't think we anticipated this. It's like, are we good?
And we're going to run into this probably several more times. I mean, this is the second technical assistance grant that we've received through the Brownsfield, which is an incredible program. It just opens up so much more funding. And so thinking about how this gets presented to the board and in tight timelines, maybe we do kind of a check-in at some point, We are still learning how this giant grant works
Yeah.
and administering it. And so this was kind of a touch point for us to be like, okay, wow, this is happening fast. Maybe the next time we want to do just a quick check-in with you all to let you know what's going on. Unfortunately, this last one didn't line up with meetings. But Lucy and I kind of have a game plan moving forward on how to notify you all of these opportunities as they come up really fast.
Yeah, something I learned today at the meeting, with Greg and kind of the EPA team, and then there's the ICF group, which I can't think of. I hate throwing out acronyms. I'm sorry. What's ICF stand for?
It's just ICF. I've looked into it for a long time and it's just ICF.
Love it. Okay, well, there you go. ICF. I had it on my computer for a minute. It's like a health. Anyway, with all of these people in the room, I think the two big takeaways are that this is a tremendous amount of resources to be able to take advantage of. And both financial and like human. And so I think it's important to do what Shane's doing, which is to pause and just take note of the significance of the project, the significance of the amount of time and energy and resources that can go to it, and just note that for us as a board. And yeah, I definitely think that this is worth, I wouldn't express any opposition to answer your question there, Shane. And I did get the sense that the Brownsfield team is bringing a lot to the table and a lot of capacity building for us, in terms of actually coming up with plans and designs and conceptual ideas. And there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm. And I've also been a part of things with a lot of energy and enthusiasm before that never go anywhere. And so, looking at I just took a note here, my other big takeaway is what are the systems and structures given the significance of this grant funding and the complexity of it and its potential to really impact the community in a pretty significant way. It's a lot of funding. And so I don't know what that exactly looks like, of what the structure is to keep the board informed and to keep the community informed, because we don't want to miss things because we move at a glacial governmental pace, but we are still the government. So trying to balance, I think, those two mutually beneficial needs. And I don't know if it's even just something we have standing staff reports, we have standing committee reports, we have a standing Brownsfield update added to the agenda, or just something that we circle back to on where our structure of our agenda sort of is the guardian of the transparency and the communication of something so significant. But I was really impressed with the enthusiasm of the team and the potential to really lift some projects that are identified in a lot of visioning and planning documents off the ground.
Thank you. That's awesome. I have a follow-up.
Mhm.
So my follow-up is, since we didn't necessarily anticipate the time spent specifically on Lackawanna over the next couple of months, because the timeline is really in the memos from now until March, do we need to deprioritize something else to create bandwidth for this, since this is important and part of a bigger thing?
No, this is pretty much it. First for me and for staff and for what's going on is the biggest part that required my energy was this visit. And now that I've given them all the documents they need and they've had an opportunity to meet with people involved in previous community visioning sessions, and they'll go to the site tomorrow, then they really are just going to take that stuff and run with it. And there'll be a few check-ins, but nothing that's would require me to take something off or to deprioritize something.
Gotcha. And so for like the site design and reuse plan,
Well, they don't come up with one yet. So they come back to the community with several conceptual options. And if the community likes them, we can pick them. If we don't,
in January.
no, in March.
The project will be completed in March. The contract ends in March. So
Project, do you mean
the funding
But it says that they're gonna
for
present.
conceptual?
for like scope of this project, which is visual conceptual plans that are options that will be used in future reuse planning related to the cleanup of the Lackawanna Mill site.
Yeah, there's no digging holes or banging nails at this point.
I'm confused. It does say that there's a site design and reuse plan strategy and alternative scenario task, January 2024.
Yeah, that is part of the time. I mean, that is what they're coming up with, are these conceptual reuse plans.
Isn't that, like, it seems to me like that would be an inflection point where we'd need to get community input. Like if they're gonna propose.
And they also will do
Scenarios.
the community input. So like, it's not something that has to be a burden on.
Cause like Sally said, she's been part of a bunch of groups that were like really eager and motivated and doing cool stuff. It didn't go anywhere. And I think that the inflection point to make sure that this is feasible or something the community wants is at that planning stage when they come and they want to come up with different scenarios. Like if they come back and they like, I don't know, I don't even want to come up with ridiculous things that could use soundbite later. But if they have like 3 scenarios of what the reuse plan could be that have enough, like zero alignment, and that's not likely because they're a good resource and they look at the master plan, they have input. But like if the community doesn't have an opportunity to like have a conversation about what alternatives they're going to present and develop, it seems like it's more likely to not become something we can use than if we did have that touch point with the community.
Well, it sounds like there is that opportunity according to the technical assistance. I mean, what it strikes me with all of this is, one, I'm not hearing staff say we don't have the capacity for this.
Right.
2, I am hearing that we're utilizing a whole variety of plans, processes, stakeholder input that we have sitting on our shelf that we keep saying we want to bring forward. And so I don't feel super concerned that we haven't had a ton of community input, because we have all of these things that we've been talking about for 20 years, whether it's in the trails plan or whether it's in Kendall or whether it's in the animal stakeholder group. And so I feel like we've had those variety of inflection points. We're taking those, we're getting a couple people's input from where we've come from in the past. And then I think there will be opportunities. And I think it strikes me that I think what I hear you saying, Lucy, is sort of like, we're getting all this help and facilitation for free. Now, I mean, it's Sally's perspective on whether that time commitment, right, was how significant that was, or the folks who might be involved in the stakeholder group. But what I hear you saying, Lucy, is that from your perspective, staff wise, this is part of what you're doing on Brownsfield right now. Yeah. And we're getting a lot of this, it's a technical assistance grant, which means that they're providing a lot of technical assistance to us to help get this done.
Yeah, I think the concern maybe, like if we were to scan for sort of like, what if we imagined this in a worst case scenario? Like the optimist in me is like, this is great. We have increased capacity. We have a panel of experts. We have funding. We have an idea that fits within these plans. Like the optimist in me is saying, why would we say no? And I guess the wise old woman is saying, okay, well, let's just play it out if things don't go well. You know, what happens if...
I want to clear, I'm not suggesting we say no. I just want to
I know.
have a touch point. I'm wholehearted saying yes, but I'm also like just wanting to look at the process as proposed.
Same.
Sorry, no.
And so, yeah, let's just play it out a little. And I'm not saying these are your ideas. This will come
Great.
from straight from me.
Great.
Is the potential cost of getting it wrong. So it actually isn't spent good use of our amazing resources we have in front of us. If the process gets to a point where you have 3 visuals, you have these different ideas. One of it looks like a pool and a climbing gym and a bar and a restaurant. And the other idea is a museum and an art center, and another idea is a this and this. I mean, I am having deja vu. This has occurred before, where we were like, let's put these different models out and let's receive community input so that we can find a synthesis that makes the most sense and best weaves together the needs of the community with the advantage of the space. And at that point, I think we're in a really great position to potentially create something that can offer a tremendous service to the community. It can leverage a space that is not only like historical and visually essential for the community, but it can also kind of give back to the community in more than a way than just looking at it. The problem would be if you get to that inflection point and we're fighting about pools and climbing walls. And one group over here is advocating for this and the other group over here is advocating for this, and we somehow can't meet the mark. Then is there an opportunity cost in pursuing something so passionately and prioritizing it? And I don't know, like, is the worst case scenario that we spend the planning money and we don't get anywhere with it? Do we have a process that's, you know, gets the best product, that's supported by the most people in town, that fits with the visioning documents and the master plan, all things? You know, that's kind of the sweet spot that we're shooting for. So I think we can do it. I'm definitely not opposed. I'm just saying, like, let's go in eyes wide open.
Try and put a bow on it from my perspective. Environmental remediation, great. I see the need for transparency, but we don't need any further public input. Like if that's the goal of the strategy and design and everything else. But once we start talking about potential uses, I don't think we're going to be successful without taking a touch point with community input, even though we have all these other helpful documents.
And we will be. And this
plan.
Yeah, so this first meeting was just to
Right.
get. Like,
That's why I
some
asked
context.
about January, because January is when they're talking about doing site design and reuse strategy. And I'm just saying, if that's when they're going to start that process, that's when we need to be planning for a community input moment. That's all I was trying to add.
Well, and I think it's fair to just acknowledge there are a handful of folks on this board who are part of a variety of planning processes that talked about use of important spaces of the community, namely Kendall. And that discussion went a whole variety of ways. So I think it's just important to note that we're trying to learn from our previous history when we talk about buildings and spaces that are significant and important to the community. What I hear you advocating for is touch points for the community to express preferences.
Let's just set ourselves up for success.
Yeah. The whole plan for this is just to create visuals for future reuse planning. So those touch points are gonna happen if we prioritize the cleanup of Lackawanna Mill. So
Cleanup is the first step. I agree, like.
yeah, so this will all be addressed in a professionally facilitated community session and potentially multiple. What we're doing right now is just getting visuals of previous ideas, and there will be multiple options, and there will be enough options for the community to choose from. And if they don't like any of them, then we can throw them all away.
Is there any comment from Jordan or Jim or Tyler who have been involved in these previous discussions on how to set ourselves up for success that you guys have learned?
This is a nice discussion. But I think we're discussing things that are gonna happen down the road that aren't necessarily anything that's gonna do with right now. I agree with Sally. I've been a part of these things. I was with Brownfield originally when they first came to town. God, it seems like 7 years ago, 6 years ago, whenever that was. And yes, it was interesting and important back then. It's interesting and important now. And it's nice that we're actually applying all this. And this is a good discussion, but I think we just need to focus on immediately what's in front of us, and then we can discuss about everything later on, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and the term you used, professionally facilitated outreach. That's, for me, that's what we need.
And this is a meaty meeting. I didn't mean to add a long discussion into the middle of this. My concern was a timing one where if there is an important touch point potentially in January, which I maybe I'm misunderstanding. I trust you to navigate it. This is our last meeting in December unless we need to have a special meeting. And so we wouldn't have another meeting with enough notice time to be planning for that public touch point if that's our timeline. And that's why I thought it was important to discuss tonight, even though this really is just informational.
Yeah, and I think the information is awesome. Thanks for the update, Lucy, and popping in and sharing all of that.
Of course, and like Lori said, I think as we're learning more about this grant, these opportunities are going to keep happening, and I think we'll continue to think of better ways to inform the trustees in the community of what's going on. And hopefully we can do that more effectively next time.
Okay.
Thanks for wrapping this.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. On to the second half of the meeting, which hopefully we can do in an hour or less. Next item is 5, approval of consent agenda items, which includes the addition of F ski team.
Yes, and you will notice that the meeting minutes from last meeting and April were not included in this meeting, and we will have those at the next for you. And then I did include the skijoring event contract as well in there, as we discussed last time, with the $5,000 and it only being a 1-year contract right now.
I had a question. For the special event application for the Rocky Mountain Sled Dog. Because that's included in the, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was no location map operations plan with explanation of safety, medical, and security, or written permission of from property owner to occupy the premises.
Okay.
Thank you.
This unfortunately was a last minute application. They had 2 days to submit the application to us after we had the initial meeting. The location map, the operations plan, as well as the additional documentation has been trickling in. They'll have a meeting other than 2 days right before. I'm asking for conditional approval other than what's in the packet, as well as the ski race conditional approval to receive all that information. As much as we try to get our schedules to connect this year, so it would not be last minute. Unfortunately, timeframes just did not work out. But the route map is going to be the exact same as last year. We are not updating or changing the Sled Dog race course, scope, or event size. We have spoken with staff for the grooming. That is all going to be the exact same as last year. Unfortunately, as of right now, we don't have enough snow to dictate whether or not we can increase that course like we wanted to.
Okay.
But conditional approval only. And that will be coming to EMS and Sheriff's Department.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the reasons my attention was drawn to this, is because I feel like this happened last year with this event.
Unfortunately, yes.
It's a small enough event and it's a great event. And, you know, if it was the size of ski touring, I think then it would be more of an issue for me. But I mean, 25 to 30 people is fine. I just, yeah.
I still consider it an issue.
Yeah.
That we are currently working on.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Are you comfortable with the conditional approval?
Yeah, absolutely.
It is on the same day as the ski race.
Yes.
Well, and from an EMS standpoint, when we have multiple events in the same day, knowing well beforehand so that we can try and staff, pretty important. And these are just always, I want to voice my concern for that, for doing events, trying to get as much lead time as possible. That way we can make sure that all of the events are, we can provide the appropriate level of service in case multiple things went wrong. But
I would like to clarify, we have students that day at the Mountain Film Festival. We'll be at Kendall Mountain that evening. The ski race from the Silverton School will be at Kendall during the day, as well as the ski joy races for the dog sled. And again, my apologies to the EMS director and the board for not being able to get this as quickly as I wanted. Notices were sent out, unfortunately. Schedules do not align.
Do you have any concerns about timing conflict between the end of the ski race using Kendall and the setup of Mountain Film?
I do not. I spoke with the event organizers, Sally Barney from Silverton School, as well as Brandon Gates with the Mountain Film Festival. They have a co-share space for a minimal impact for both events. Thank you, Sally, for getting your event started earlier and finishing around 3 o'clock. And they will not be using part of the space that the Mountain Film Festival will. The reason we did move into Kendall this year was a increase in capacity for the Mountain Film Festival. Previously, it was at the Grand Imperial Hotel where it was so popular they need more space. We may outgrow it again this year, so we are looking forward to the future.
Great. Any other questions about the consent agenda or discussion? Someone care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Edwards?
Yes.
Trustee Kränker?
Yes.
Trustee Harper?
Yes.
Trustee Birma?
Yes.
Trustee George?
yes,
Pro Tem Barney?
Yes.
Mayor Furman?
Yes. Thank you all very much. The next item on our agenda is staff reports, 6A, I feel like, which is the brownfields update for Lackawanna site planning. I feel like we've covered that, but would you like to add anything else? Okay, wonderful. So the next item on our agenda.
Can I add
Yes,
2
please.
things to the staff reports? I wanted to highlight our land use and development
Oh,
code.
Yeah.
Community learning sessions. They're starting at 6 p.m. on the 2nd and 4th Wednesdays in January, February, and March. So we're planning on 6 learning sessions. And these will be virtual and recorded on our YouTube channel as well. And we are working with our effective planners, builders. Lucy's putting it all together, and really the goal of this is that we can all learn together about land use and development and have a shared language as we navigate some of these difficult discussions. So tune in.
So quick clarification, are they only virtual?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that will be the best recording quality, and then anyone can view them anytime because they'll be available. So we can always refer back to them. Kind of like what we did with community builders, really like that format. So we're doing something similar for our land use and development code.
And login information will be the town's typical.
It will be exactly the same. Yep. Yep. Not gonna change that. And then I also wanted to call on Melina here, and she has some important dates for you all. And we'll be preparing a memo for January 8th meeting, but we wanted to give you guys a heads up.
Yeah, so as you know, we've got our election coming up in April. It'll be on April the 9th, the 2nd Tuesday of the month. Today we are 121 days out from that election. Nomination petitions may be circulated and signed beginning on the 91st day and end on the 71st day prior to that day of election. That 91st day will be January the 9th, and the 71st day will be January the 30th. So that window will be when nomination petitions can be circulated.
Coming up.
Coming up.
Thank you, Maureen. And we will publish a memo in the packet and great.
It's even more fun than it looks. I encourage everyone to consider participating.
Flood Melina's office on January 9th.
Yes, please.
Up your petition. We have a lot of fun, guys.
Awesome. Anything else on staff reports?
That's all. Thank
Okay,
you.
so that was 9B and then an addition. And then the next item on our agenda is 7 committee boards and reports, of which we have San Juan Development Board meeting on December 1st.
So I want to remind everyone for the San Juan Development Board meeting, we talked about the housing and the housing lottery that closes on December 14th. So that's closing on December 14th, just putting that out there. And then downtown window art will be installed before Christmas. We have 28 windows. We'll be donning the art of our local artists. If you're a business owner and you get jealous that you didn't sign up right away, we'll have another round.
Because it's that cool.
Yeah. It's gonna be that cool. Or a resident. We have one resident participating in this too. Thanks, Liv.
Great. Anything else on committee or board reports?
Oh, we did have a Snuffles Energy Board meeting today. Liv and I attended, as well as Austin Lashley. We had a great San Juan presence on the board.
They really just kind of went over the purpose of the group since they've met so erratically since COVID, and appointed a new board chair from Uray County, Jake Neese, and went over different ideas for electrification, as well as issues that may stand in the way of some of these greater resiliency project ideas.
And we had a great discussion on our small towns, taking on all these tourists and kind of how to deal with that infrastructure wise, especially within our waste stream. So there's a couple of contacts in Ridgeway that we're going to reach out to talk about how to do it.
Well, awesome. Thanks for going.
There's an EPA meeting tomorrow.
Yes.
Cool.
3:00. 3:00.
Awesome. Okay, the next item on our
It's gonna
agenda.
be a really interesting one. I just want to put that in there. The meeting tomorrow is talking about Howardsville and the expansion of what would be out at Howardsville. So it's a very, it's a BPMD meeting, but it's at 3:00. And we're going to be talking about Howardsville. So that's exciting.
Planning heavy.
Yeah.
Nice.
Sorry, that's
How
all.
would someone watch it if they wanted to? Or participate?
So they would come here at 3:00. It's not live streamed, is it?
No, they don't do them live.
No, so it's at town hall at 3:00.
Cool.
Yep.
Thank you.
Are they recorded for people to view later?
No,
Oh, okay.
There's no Zoom option, I don't think.
no, not for BPMD.
No.
Anything else?
Okay, that's it, I promise.
Okay, cool. The next item is trustee reports. For which I have something even that's long. Does anybody else have anything?
I wanted to do a shout out for the amazing events this weekend, Mistletoe Market, so many folks out, such a great local event with vendors and everybody visiting, and huge thanks to the town staff for all the decorating and putting up to Melina, and Anna. And for the Chambertown Collaborative Potluck, Jim and I were there. It was just such a great event to see so many different people. Liv was there, just Jordan, it was just such a cross section of our community. So a lot of great food. Thanks to the chamber for the work there, putting that on the town and just decorating, and town staff tearing down all the tables today, I know. So it was really exciting. And I think Christmas Bazaar coming up. So December's a great locals time.
Nice. Well, I'll attempt to be very brief on what I think is an important topic to a bunch of people, which is cemetery and the phone booth that's up there. Initially, when I learned about the phone booth being put up, my knee-jerk reaction was, this is like so out of place, like let's figure out if we can take it down right away. I didn't think about learning more, which is my own ignorance. So initially I was like, yeah, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't really seem like it belongs there. And then we received a letter, which was published in the newspaper this last week as well, explaining the context around the phone booth. And that was incredibly helpful for me. And I am definitely in support of maintaining that phone booth there. And I know that that's something that a bunch of people disagree with, but I would urge everyone to get educated, because I did a full 180 once I learned all of the different pieces of this. And I would ask that we have a discussion about this at our next meeting, potentially with more public input, once everyone has had an opportunity to kind of read the letter to the editor against the phone booth, as well as read the reason why the phone booth was put there, so that we can have a discussion. But after reading kind of all of the different inputs we have, I think it was a really thoughtful gesture that could be meaningful. And even though it isn't what one would expect in the Silverton Cemetery, I think that their intention and what it can be for our community is meaningful and important, and I support it. But I would like us to have a discussion, and since we are the arbiter of what happens in the cemetery right now, since we decided to not ask staff to develop a committee right away, I would like to give both sides closure to what we intend to do with the phone booth, and that's why I asked it to be on the next meeting agenda.
Very good.
Agreed. Great, let's do that.
Okay. Anything else in trustee reports? So we can move now to 9A, continued business, the re-release of the Kendall Deck RFP.
So there was a miscommunication with the contractors who awarded the RFP for the Kendall Deck. They were under the impression that they were only providing a quote, did not intend to actually bid on the project. So after speaking with them, they also gave us some pointers on the design and engineering of it. So after speaking with them, we went back to the engineers to refine the scope of the project, and the new scope is in there. It's not changed drastically. It was just a little configurations. And then we would like to re-release this RFP as an RFP. To be fair, it did say RFQ on the top. So they had that going for them. And then as soon as possible, so we can get a contractor to start when the snow melts.
And we expect the same contractor to respond to.
Nope.
We don't.
No.
So we may lose.
Weren't they the only?
Yeah, we went through this a couple times with no responses. And I think what happened was they were asked to give a quote when they were, and then we took that as a bit. I'm not really sure what happened, but they came to me in September and said, we didn't actually bid on this project. So we do need to go back out. I have been in contact with several contractors who said they will bid on it if we put it out.
Oh, great. Okay.
Okay, that was actually my question.
Good.
Yeah.
And I gave them
From this-
plenty of time this time. What's that?
The input from the contractor that withdrew,
Yeah,
beneficial to us?
yeah, it was.
Oh, good.
Right.
So thank
Got free advice.
you, Lauren Lou.
I feel like the Kendall Deck has been talked about since I moved here.
Yeah, so I gave them plenty of time till like the end of January in this RFP to give us a proposal to hopefully get this done in 2024.
I think one of the most surprising things I've learned as an adult is how expensive decks are.
I just keep painting ours. Our wood is here. I just keep painting it because I'm like, well, I'm just gonna keep painting it. We have a lot of deck. I just keep painting it.
Such a good point.
So would we like to make a motion to re-release the Kendall Deck RFP?
So moved.
Second,
Thank you. Roll call, please.
All right, trustee Edwards.
yes.
Trustee Cranker.
Yeah.
Trustee Harper.
Yes.
Trustee Bearman.
Yes.
Robertson Barney.
Yes. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda, and the second to last item, in fact, is 9B, review of the brownfield bids. You're on it.
So we released our brownfield RFP, a little over a month and a half ago, October 24th. And we were expecting 3, maybe 4 at the most responses, and we received 8. So that's super exciting. That's really high for a brownfields project, according to Greg Davis. So that was super exciting. I reviewed those proposals last week, and I can confidently say any of these firms could probably do a really great job. However, a few did stand out. Stantec, which is a global environmental science planning, architecture, engineering, project management, project economics firm in Denver. And they have had a lot of experience working on brownfield projects for municipalities within Colorado and have had some really impressive work down in Canyon City that really showcases their reuse planning experiences. And I think we all just got to talk about the importance of reuse planning. And so they scored the highest on their management outline and project approach. They had a really impressive proposal that really outlined how they would address each task that we outlined in our work plan. And then we have Ramble, and that name might sound familiar to you because they've been working in San Juan County since 2003 on Bonita Peak Mining District projects. They are super familiar with the area, with the contaminants. And they have partnered with Partners Environmental Consulting, which is a firm with offices in Colorado, who have worked with CDPHE, Mark Rudolph, and the town to determine our target areas and priority sites for our work plan. And so Ramble's experience in San Juan County and Partners' experience with this specific work plan make them extremely competitive. They scored the highest on experience and capabilities, and have done great work in the county. And then Aries is a firm, a national firm that specializes in a variety of disciplines related to the scope of our project. And they were a standout because they've partnered with community builders who would be working on the community outreach aspect of the grant. And so that was an attractive quality. So I'd love to open it up for discussion on if anyone else thought a different firm stood out to them that should be recognized right now. If not, I think we're looking for some direction to potentially move into interviews with Ramble, Stantec, and Aries to further learn more about these firms and are interested to see if trustees want to participate in that. If not, if there's any questions you want us to ask, and just your general thoughts on the proposals.
I'm happy to follow staff's direction that we have interviews of the top 3 that you selected.
Okay.
I think it would be cool if a trustee was invited to participate, but I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, absolutely.
And more of like just to sit and listen in and also be able to like report back in addition to you guys. If you're conducting the interview, the trustee can also just be like observing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also we may not have the bandwidth, or schedule may not work out. So that's fine with me if that doesn't happen.
Okay.
What else do you guys think? That was just mine.
Sounded great.
Yeah, super exciting. Super exciting.
I hope you don't mind, we didn't put all of the proposals in there, but they are all linked.
Yeah, I did see that.
I saw that.
Yeah.
We did not expect 9.
No, it's kind of exciting. It was energy around that. Extremely exciting. Yeah, really, really cool. I got on page 200. You were so excited. I read about 400 pages in 2 days. And they're not easy things to read if you have to read them. Yeah. But yeah, there is a lot of energy about kind of mining in brownfields right now, and I think smaller communities. And I received a lot of attention at the Brownfields conference, which was exciting, and went to a lot of sessions related to these projects. So it's cool to see that work's being done similar to this and that we got really awesome proposals from firms that have done work really similar to what's in our work plan.
Do you think going to the conference related to the number of responses we got?
Yeah, definitely. I met with most of these firms at the conference.
Great, good use of.
Yeah, that is
money.
really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Time well spent.
Mhm.
Thanks, Lucy.
Of course.
Who's chomping at the bit to make a motion?
Is that motion or direction?
I mean,
It says.
Motion or direction.
Motion.
Do we have?
That's a Gloria question.
You can really just give us direction. In the RFP, it had stated that we would pick an applicant tonight. But that's why we're asking you to extend it so that, because there are some, as we're looking through these proposals, they propose like the costs differently. So we want to make sure we have the right information from them to compare them across the board. So we are just asking for you to, I guess, approve an extension of when we are going to be awarding this.
so why don't we consider a motion to postpone the section of the selection of a qualified environmental professional and give direction to interview the 3 as recommended by staff
Perfect.
So moved.
Second.
and directed.
Undirected.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Gosh. Trustee Edwards?
Yes.
Trustee Cranker?
Yes.
Trustee Harper?
Yes.
Trustee Birma?
Yes.
Trustee George?
Yes.
Member Tim Barney?
Yes.
Berman?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank
I'll
you.
let you know about scheduling interviews and see who is available. So excited.
And now we'll end with a 2-hour public hearing. But we do have a public hearing for the next item 9C, public hearing ordinance 2023-11 and ordinance amending chapter 16, article 2, division 4 of the municipal code of the town of Silverton, Colorado by amending the historic review committee provision.
There's a couple people still out there with us.
Yeah.
No.
So,
Watch on YouTube.
You're sleeping.
so we'll start with our overview.
Yes, I'll make it super quick. The trustees requested this on October 23rd to allow for alternate members to serve on the historic review committee when regular members are absent. And so this proposed ordinance 2311 would allow for 3 alternate members, including a member of the Board of Trustees, a San Juan County Planning Commission member, and then a year-round resident of the town.
Wonderful, thank you. And so we'll now open up for public comment. We do not have anyone in person. If you're on Zoom, please click the raise hand button.
You're twin.
Seeing none, we'll close public comment. We'll begin trustee discussion. Be happy with follow through direction.
And just to note really quickly, we have an alternate member from the planning commission and a year-round resident of the town, but we don't have one appointed by the board of trustees by the board of trustees. So just to let you know if you want to do that in the future. Or now.
So I'm the member and then we just need an alternate. And it is pretty substantive for the next little bit. There's we are adopting the bylaws the next meeting and also going through some selection, like updating the criteria on an ongoing basis and reviewing 4 live applications in January. And it's going to be really tricky because we kind of have to use the existing structure while also working on creating a better new structure. The positive there is that we can use the context of using the old structure to inform all of the committee members
what works, what doesn't.
of what really might be subjective or flawed, but
Actual case studies.
yeah.
You are really selling it.
And Shane is gonna be here for all of those. Great. Yep, done.
Well, no, but I mean, because
Yeah.
we created this because there were issues and we identified those issues and wanting to fix them. And we're just going to be doing that in parallel with actually having to review things because we don't want to not allow people to do development while we tinker.
Yeah. Walking and chew gum at the same time, guys.
And it's a very participatory group.
Very true.
Do we want to appoint any, well, that's not part of this, so that should be done at the next one probably, because it's a public hearing on this. So would we like to make a motion or is there more discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2023-11 to allow alternate members to serve on the Historic Review Committee when its regular members are absent.
And this is the first reading. I just wanted to define that.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Edwards?
Yes.
Trustee Cranker?
Yes.
Trustee Harper?
Yes.
Trustee Bearma?
Yes.
Trustee George?
Pass.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney?
Yes.
Mayor Furman?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you.
And remember when we thought we had to read all of the ordinance?
I sure do, because
That's a thank you, Clayton moment. Being advised that we don't in fact need to read it at the meeting.
Oh.
Okay, so we'll now have our closing public comment. We do not have anyone in person. We do have a Zoom public comment for any of the other Zoom participants who didn't raise their hand yet. If you would like to make a public comment, please click the raise hand button. You'll be promoted to panelist. We'll keep a 3-minute timer and please introduce yourself at the beginning of your comment. Melody, the floor is yours.
This is Melody Skinner. Can you hear me? Uh-oh.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good. Sorry. I wanted to compliment you yet again on your impressive discussions and how you come to your decisions. And I often tell people that you have the best discussions in reaching your decisions. But I also want to add that tonight, I noticed a fair share of responsibility in your discussion, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll go ahead and close public comment. The time is 10:16 p.m. and I adjourn this meeting. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My first budget.
Yeah.